Starmer, and then I would tell the Galactic Empire that he was part of the Rebel Alliance and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP for being useless. They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space in a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. He goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months. We have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Which MP would you send to space?
Oh, no, I'll get in terrible trouble if I answer that. But it's fair to say there's quite a long list.
The sad thing is about sending people into space on a one-way ticket is I don't think that we've built a spaceship big enough to take the lunatics off this planet. I mean, from the net zero loonies to the transgender loonies to the racists to the terrorists. There is just so much to the wokerati. We need some big spaceships.
Big spaceships.
Good evening. I never know how you're going to start this conversation, Jeremy.
Katy Perry went to space today, OK? Who would you send... I'd love her to say what I wanted to, but I'd never disrespect her. Who would you send to space who could never come back?
Well, I'd be happy to send Ed Miliband to space, I think.
Oh, that is an outrageous question, so I'm not even going to answer that question.
Sam Matterface, so you get the job, yeah? Come on.
No, Sam Matterface, I tell you what, there's no.
I did.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, it's Bank Holiday Monday. Turn that music off, old man. Thank you very much indeed. A very good welcome. Thank you to Dr. David Bull. Is he back tomorrow? No, he's not. Cast into the wilderness of production. Bless his heart. Returning, Ian Collins, who's probably at my house as we speak. Happy Bank Holiday Monday. Somebody said to me when I came in today, why, Kyle, are you working on a bank holiday? Well, the choice was Peppa Pig World or this. And seeing as how the Easter egg hunt started at 5:05 yesterday morning, and I'm utterly cream-crackered, yes, I know, I've got more kids than Boris Johnson, I thought I would gather together the spirits of my abilities, which aren't very high, and come and be part of your bank holiday afternoon. So a very big welcome. Thank you very much indeed for tuning in. Talk, of course, the home of free speech, common sense. So much to talk about in the next 3 hours. And as ever, your involvement. Let's nail it from day one here. 0344 499 1000. Jodie is here. God bless her. She's on the phone. She'll take your calls. You can get Ryan on a WhatsApp, starting with... He's come up with a great thing. We'll do it in a minute. 0344 499 1000 on WhatsApp. You can text us on 87222. Of course, David Bull makes the point. 1.4 billion people, Catholics across the world, in mourning today as the Pope Francis sadly dying at 88. An incredible man, actually. An incredible man who argued for so many different parts of society over many years. Your thoughts and your involvement on that, if you want to talk about that, 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about Sir Keir Starmer. We always do. He's under mounting pressure to publicly back that Supreme Court gender ruling of 5 days ago now, saying that women cannot have a penis. We've had complete silence from the Labour Party. I read over the weekend there's apparently already a WhatsApp group of front bench MPs in the Labour Party doing their best to talk about how they can defy a Supreme Court ruling, the highest legal band, if you like, in the land. What's interesting is that Starmer has always lived by the truth of courts and how the legal system is important. Why doesn't he open his traps? Sir Keir Starmer, what's wrong with you, mate? Too scared of upsetting, no doubt, the people in your party who would think it was all right. Look at what happened over the weekend. Police on the hunt for trans right activists who defaced 7 London monuments, including the statue of suffragette Millicent Fawcett. I make the point I made to David. I don't have a problem with trans people at all, but I have a teenage daughter, and I am not apologising to any activist who's going to shout in my face. I have a right to my opinion. I don't want yours is, mine is. Absolutely. But for a man who is not a woman to be competing in female sports, to be using female-only spaces, should now be over, because that's the Supreme Court ruling. So where are you? Where are you, Sir Keir Starmer? I want to hear from you. What do you make of that? 0344 499 1000. Ed Miliband is if I could use the word, can I say pregnant goldfish on this show? Am I allowed to say that? No. Well, I'm going to anyway at some point. It's a twat. You can say that's not the other one. Anyway, Sir Ed Miliband. No, Sir Ed. Oh, God, not Sir Ed Miliband. Ed Miliband has attacked Nigel Farage and indeed the Tories, that's easy enough, and said, you don't understand how important net zero is. You think the British public aren't up for it? Tell me, people, all 11 of you on a bank holiday Monday, because apparently you're all watching the football, tell me, do you think net zero is important? Is it just us here at Talk Towers that think that Ed Miliband's a crazy nut job? 0344 499 1000, and of course the story of the day. And I make no apologies on a bank holiday of trying to just have a little bit of fun, because it isn't a happy day. A civil servant, this is brilliant, twerk and pensions, get it up on the screen, twerk and pensions. A civil servant has been filmed moonlighting on a porn site. This lady, who calls herself Katy, hello Katy, hello, is supposed to advise you on how to get a job and how to secure your long-term future. Whilst talking to people on that, she's also been doing live followers on X-Hamster, where she agrees to dress up, talk dirty, flash, role play, be topless and striptease for you. So that whole thing about working from home, this woman is being paid, a civil servant, by you, my friends, to advise people about their pensions and about their work opportunities, and she's moonlighting as twerk and pensions, which I'm afraid gives us here on Drive Time a pretty low base from which to start, and we will deliver to you as we always do. This is from Ryan on Bank Holiday Monday. Stand by, team. There might even be a prize. What? I don't even know why we're in trouble. If Jodie answered this, we'd be in trouble. What's the strangest thing that you've done for money? Yes, you heard it right. Drive Time on Talk. What's the strangest thing you've done for money? 0344 499 1000. Send a voice note to Ryan. Don't. Jodie's just said worked on this show. Naked. 0344 499 1000. You can also text us 87222. Start your message with the word talk. What is the strangest thing you've done for money? Well, let me tell you about my first guest. The strangest thing that this man's ever done for money is decide to become an MP. Richard Tice, a very good afternoon, Deputy Leader at Reform UK. How are you?
Well, it's lovely to see you, Jeremy, on a bank holiday. I must say, a little bit of a surprise, but anyway, it's good to see you. And what a weekend! I mean, Liverpool have. We've edged closer to the title. How's West Ham doing, Jeremy?
What? Sorry, why are you a bit sprightly this afternoon? Have you been you're like one of those electric cars that's been plugged in, Tice. You're sort of full of energy this afternoon. No, I am here.
I've been out and about talking to lots of people.
I've seen and respect. I would say this to you. The choice for me was a bank holiday drive time show or Peppa Pig World. It was a no bleeding brainer. I got to sleep on the train on the way in. Actually, peace and quiet. So here I am. Richard, let's start. Obviously, the big news story of the day, Pope Francis, aged 88. An incredible man and actually a visionary, a man who talked about the underprivileged and the poor and people in society who deserve to be heard. And actually, to be fair to him, he was a monumental difference to many of his predecessors, wasn't he?
He was, and so brave right until the end. I was just learning this afternoon how he actually defied doctors' orders over recent days in order to carry out his duties in the knowledge of just how ill he was. And seeing the US Vice President, yes, I think it was a terrible shock for everybody because we all knew he'd been so ill, but we were hoping that he'd come through. And so it really was a terrible blow, but a remarkable Pope, and the whole Catholic Church and so many others will be so sad at his passing. It
reminded me, actually, it was picked up earlier by one of the news stations, it reminded me of the Queen, literally hours from death, saying goodbye to Boris and greeting Liz Truss. All about duty, all about doing the right thing to the end. And he was certainly a man who encapsulated that in terms of the way that he lived his life and the impact that he had. And you're quite right, 1.4 billion Catholics across the world in mourning. And our thoughts are with those people. If you want to talk about that, 0344 499 1000. We have to talk about so many things because, you know, for you on a bank holiday, you'd probably be, I don't know, I'm quite surprised to see you sober on a bank holiday. Let's talk about Sir Keir Starmer then, Ticeman, shall we? Can I put this to you? We talk publicly, though. This whole trans debate, which has become so polarised, I can just absolutely make this as simple as I did to David Bull. I've been surrounded for 20 years in this business by women who quite rightly talk about women's rights. And I've been nothing other than supportive of that. Genuinely, I mean that. What I don't understand as a father with a teenage girl, and I'd love your view, a reform view, is if I as a father don't want a man with a penis in a dress, in a changing room, or taking part in a sport that my daughter has trained for, why is that wrong? But more than this, where are all the female activists who quite rightly have shouted and screamed for women's rights disappear off the face of the earth at the first opportunity? Don't hear from them, Richard. Don't hear from them at all. Suddenly women's rights are out the window, pal. Don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is... It's extraordinary because it's actually so basic and so simple. There are only two sexes and two genders. And when I campaign up and down the country, that simple statement gets the biggest round of applause from people at events that we speak to. And quite rightly, the Supreme Court came to its basic judgment. How it took them months to come up with an 89-page judgment. I mean, frankly, for me, it's about 2 sentences, but there we are.
Yeah.
And I think for the vast majority of the country, I do think that it is, firstly, shameful that the Prime Minister has been utterly silent on this, a man who was clearly very, very confused on other channels. He seemed to get confused about biology on a number of occasions. Mind you, he has sort of semi-recanted, unlike the leader of the Lib Dems, Ed Davey, who still seems to think that women can have a penis. But you know, that's what's happened to the mainstream political scene. But then the other point that is very, very clear is you've got a Prime Minister who is very keen to listen to and abide by advisory rulings from a foreign court on matters of the Chagos Islands and pay billions of pounds of British taxpayers' cash to give away a very valuable freehold. But when it comes to the legal binding ruling from the highest court in the United Kingdom, the Supreme Court, a lawyer who claims to be driven by the rule of law is not only silent, but it seems that members of his own cabinet are plotting and working out how to, in a sense, overturn the ruling of the highest court.
Well, this is the story, and I'm so glad you brought it up. This is the story over the weekend, Richard, that says that there are many front bench cabinet ministers already got a WhatsApp group and they're trying to work out how they can undermine the Supreme Court's ruling. Paul in Dorset says, Jez, will the Prime Minister have arrested those ministers who break the law? This is a man who abides more by the ECHR, it seems, to get himself and his left-wing friends off problems more than he does. This is a seminal moment, and I go back to it. It's all about, I think, and maybe this is unfair, it gets jumped upon. It's one of those, it's another example of how the pile-on happens from the activists. And Starmer, you know, the man that can never make a decision, the man who I said during the election campaign made his tent so big that he'd spend any time he was in power trying to please all the people all the time. He needs to speak. I mean, what about... You saw those terrible pictures over the weekend. The police are hunting trans right activists who defaced 7 London monuments, including the statue of suffragette Millicent Fawcett. Sorry, so this is acceptable, is it? I mean, it is hateful hooliganism, and it needs to be called out for that. And the people need to be arrested and not be hiding behind the fact that they've jumped upon the bandwagon of something that doesn't, frankly, make sense. Why can't we have... in sport a trans section? I don't understand, but I will not change what I think about my teenage daughter. Sorry, that's how I see it.
Well, I've got a bit of news for you, which is that tomorrow morning at 11:30, because Parliament reconvenes after recess, and conveniently the first hour and a quarter will be talking to and hearing from the Secretary of State for Justice, because it's justice questions, and therefore it'll be hopefully an opportunity for some of us to challenge the Secretary of State, Shabana Mahmood, on this issue and make sure that she seems satisfied and clear and will abide by the rulings from the Supreme Court. Let's see, shall we? And it may well be that urgent questions are tabled on this particular issue, because it does seem, I think, to the vast majority of this country, pretty fundamental that we have a government that understands basic biology.
Lucy, this is interesting. Rachel says, Richard, please do this tomorrow. No arrests for protesters calling for the death of anti-trans people on the weekend, yet poor Lucy Connolly doing a 2.5-year stretch, and we don't have two-tier policing. It's a disgrace. And this is my point. When you get Miliband, who we'll talk about in a minute, Miliband saying, I think, net zero, the Tories and Reform are barking mad. Everybody wants it. No, they don't, you out-of-touch idiot. Maybe I live in a different world, but I don't see anybody who agrees. Let's move it on to that, because, he's got some front, hasn't he? Attacks Nigel Farage over the weekend and says that net zero is what everybody wants, and he and Badenoch and the rest of you just don't understand what the British people really want. Stupid net zero, Richard Tice, it's all yours.
Well, net stupid zero is catching on as a slogan up and down the country, and the reason the Miliband is attacking us is because they're absolutely terrified. They're knocking on doors around the country, and they're hearing from people that actually they're delighted that Nigel and I basically saved British steel, and they're delighted that we're standing up and saying, look, actually this net stupid zero is what leads to higher bills and higher cost of living, and businesses just cannot compete. Industry cannot compete. We're deindustrializing because of this lunacy, and Miliband is under serious pressure. There's talks that he might actually disappear in the next cabinet reshuffle, because his actions is impeding on growth. It's making everybody poorer. It's destroying jobs. It's destroying industries, whether it be steel, car, oil and gas, chemicals. And people have woken up. And what I'm delighted about, even establishment newspapers like The Times have actually had an editorial, I think 10 days ago or so, a couple of weeks ago, where they said that net zero had to be re-looked at and reconsidered. That's a pretty significant moment. So Miliband is under huge pressure. He probably noticed the poll that came out over the weekend that said he would actually lose his seat if there was a general election called tomorrow to reform. So, yeah, look, I'm delighted that he's so petrified of the progress we are making. And it'll be very interesting, won't it? Because the price of gas is plummeting as we speak. It'd be interesting at the next price cap from Ofgem for the July quarter, the next 3 months after that, whether or not the price actually comes down significantly, because we keep hearing that the price of electricity is driven by the high gas price. Well, actually, the price of gas is down at sort of 5 or 6 year lows. So presumably the price of electricity and therefore the price cap will tumble. You can bet your bottom dollar it won't, folks, which will prove the lie that has.
It is a lie, and it'll be so interesting. Just let's touch upon that poll very quickly. Ryan's not going to do his. We haven't got time. We've got all the time in the world today. A Reform poll, a poll at the weekend, just off the top of my head. If there was an election tomorrow, Reform would have 180 seats. The Tories and Labour together 165. That is quite astonishing in itself. And we're 3.5 years out from an election. Is that what you are hearing, feeling, seeing on the streets? That people really, this uniparty stuff, backwards and forwards, false promises, has been going on for so long that even, don't get upset, even if people want more meat on the bone and they think there's only 4 of you and you haven't got any experience, that actually the message is cutting through. The British people are up for change because they've had enough of being treated the way they've been treated.
They absolutely are. And if you just look at the progress of our poll rating and the sort of forecast on the number of seats in the last 8 or 9 months since the general election, and then if we keep working hard, keep having the right message, then I think people may be astonished, and that seat projection number should hopefully only go up. Look, polls are polls, they go up and down a bit, but it is remarkable, and we will just keep working away, and I think that we could continue to make huge progress, because the reality is you've got the sort of the cultural madness of this, the likes of the woke stuff, and I mean, dear old Keir, I think I might call him trans-tier Keir now. I mean, we've sort of done three-gear Keir. We might get a trans-tier Keir. They've had enough of this cultural nonsense, and financially, people are getting poorer.
I think also, just
people are getting poorer week on week.
I agree.
Month.
But also forget that we're friends, right? I would say this about the four of you that have made more noise in Parliament than the other 646. But what I think is really interesting, and what I think, I think people went through a situation with politics, with the pension, with the expenses scandal and the lies and all that, and I think people lost interest. I'm not saying people are massively back into being interested by politics, but I think they want answers, and I think people are switched on, because I think whether it's COVID, the cost of living, governments that have lied, the changes, things that haven't materialised, I think they're up for a fresh voice, and I think people are more switched on in that way. One of the things that I would say about you guys at Reform is that you are very straight, you're very open, you talk to us, but the million-dollar question is, Richard Tice, let's fast forward 4 years. Let's say that Nigel Farage sweeps to power. I know where you'll be next door. I've sussed that out. I've seen your money clip, right? Will you still talk to us if you because they've all said this? Oh yes, Jez, I'll come on it. We don't hear from Labour. Will you still talk to us if you end up in government, Richard Tice?
Jeremy.
No.
Of course. I would never forget who trained me, and of course we'll talk to everybody. We enjoy talking to people. I mean, it's fundamental. So
now I go. Now listen, two other things. One serious, and I'm really strong on this. MPs and peers are trying to block the liar Trump from a Parliament address. Now, I've said this before about Donald Trump. There's a lot I don't agree with. But he was democratically elected by a majority of Americans, which hasn't happened for decades. How dare MPs and peers who disagree with his politics think they have any right to try and stop him coming, if he's given that state visit, and addressing you lot? Agree or disagree?
Well, I wonder if these are the same MPs who had such a strop because Israel decided not to allow two Labour MPs who'd been asking for sanctions and boycott against Israel. Well, surprise, surprise, Israel said, thanks very much, we don't want you coming and spouting your nonsense in our country. I suspect these are the very same people who are massive hypocrites by saying, oh no, we don't want the democratically elected with the biggest number of votes ever, I think, in American history, president coming to here. Look, fundamentally, of course, lots of people might disagree with President Trump, either with the personality or the way he goes about things. But forget all the noise, focus on one simple thing. He has highlighted, to a greater degree than anybody else, that China is a strategic national threat to our security and the security of the Western world.
Yeah.
And he is making a serious recommendation to American citizens and by implication to the Western world. We better wake up, folks, and start to decouple from our dependency on China. We have no idea of the degree to which they have infiltrated our systems. What I can tell you is that Chinese interests own all the electricity in London and the southeast, all of those pipes and transmission cables, which means that if they've, for example, put some bug into the software, they could turn off the electricity in London and the southeast. They own water companies in the north. They own gas companies. Who knows what they have done? We've seen the damage that they tried to do to British Steel. That is a massive wake-up call to the British people. So, yeah, we've got to, I think, learn serious lessons very rapidly. And of course, we believe in free and fair trade, but the critical word is fair. What we don't believe is abusive thieving of patents and technology and intellectual property. And we don't believe in dumping of, for example, steel on our shores. And actually, I think it's also a wake-up call to many businesses. Don't be so reliant if you're going to outsource your production to China, given everything that everybody should have known over the last 10 to 20 years.
Couldn't agree more.
That's the real strategic point. Forget all the noise about President Trump and whether you do or don't like the way he goes about things. This is serious, and we've got to wake up.
I'll tell you what's not serious. Nigel Farage and Richard Tice have both publicly said that if they came to power, the one thing they would attack is the blob. I will give you a light-hearted Bank Holiday Monday story to finish, Richard Tice. A DWP advisor, this is brilliant, it's my favourite story of the day by a mile, obviously, has been filmed look at his face, moonlighting on a porn site whilst giving advice over the phone to pension claimants and people who are trying to work out what to do with their living. She was seen working from home, helping callers at the same time as flashing her followers live on X-Hamster. The woman who said she was called Katy also replied to saucy messages from fans. One wrote, "Are you wearing a thong, Katy?" In a dressing gown and T-shirt, she said, "Maybe." The follower wrote back, "What more can you do?" She said, "Well, frankly, dirty talk, flashing, role play, topless and striptease, anything you want." This is a civil bleeding servant we're paying for. Cut aside the fact it's brilliant. It's led Ryan to challenge the people who are listening on this bank holiday to this question, which I'm going to give to you, Richard Tice. What's the strangest thing you've ever done for money, Tice, man?
Become a politician, I think, to be honest.
I said that at the beginning. That's what I said, yeah.
I mean, this is... what's interesting is the... congratulations to the researcher who obviously spent a considerable amount of time looking through these dating
what
or
a
porn
job!
sites.
What a
looking for
job!
civil service. Clearly, but anyway, in all seriousness, that's another good reason why civil servants need to be in the office the vast majority of times. Look, there is a place, if you're writing a boring report or reading a boring report, there's a place for working from home with a cold towel over your head so you can concentrate and not be distracted. But actually, I think for the vast majority of white-collar jobs, actually, if you're in the office, you're sharing ideas, you're brainstorming. If you're a younger person, then you'll be learning from those who been around the block a bit more for more years, and that's a good thing. And guess what? Actually, talking and socialising is a good thing, and that all happens in and around the workplace. And productivity in the civil service has collapsed, and this just sounds like another rather more extreme version of why productivity in the public sector is on the slide, and that costs us all cash. That costs us real money.
I'm going to not name this woman because this is utterly brilliant and you will play this back on loop. An anonymous text has just said, "I think Richard Tice should set up an OnlyFans site. He's very attractive." And that's from Dave. I'm joking. Richard Tice, you're a legend. We appreciate it. Happy bank holiday. And he speaks sense. He speaks sense about Miliband. He speaks sense about Boris Johnson. He speaks sense about Starmer. What do you make of all of that? Should Starmer come out and say, "Do you know what? That's the Supreme Court. I am steeped in legality. I'm a lawyer. I'm going to stand by that." No, too worried by his own party. What do you make of Ed Miliband? "I think Nigel Farage and the Tories are a disgrace. The British public want net zero." Do you? Because I haven't met anybody. Sure, people will say there's an issue. But right now, to skint a country that's already skint still further is, in my mind, ludicrous. MPs and peers trying to block the liar Trump. Whether the liar Trump is a liar or not, as Richard Tice just said, the biggest majority in American politics in decades won the majority popular vote, has a right to come. What do you make of all of those things? And perhaps the best question to ask you on this Bank Holiday Monday is, what's the strangest thing that you, my friends, have done for money? 87222, start your message with the word talk. This is Talk Drive.
the idea is that the police collect intelligence that might inform incidents that are going to erupt at some later stage. But of course, as is always the case with these things, it's just got out of control to the point where the police forces across the UK are spending literally millions of pounds policing incidents that just aren't criminal. There's no logic to it. It's as though the police are playing at being police officers.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
About 4:32. The one thing you will know about me is I'm entirely honest, and so I'm going to be a Bank Holiday Monday honest person to you. On days like this, to try and galvanise the audience is what it's all about. We've got the sad news about Pope Francis, we've got the serious stuff, but you know we want to get you involved. It's Bank Holiday Monday. The phones are screwed. We've got an engineer who happens to be in, working on it, but we're sitting here and the phone. So we thought, anyway, listen, do voice notice might be a good idea on WhatsApp. Start with Ryan. No, don't. 0344 499 1000. While we sort out the phone lines, not me, as some engineer in Edinburgh. Voice note, Ryan, 0344 499 1000. Loads of you on text. I had a Sue in Plymouth. Woohoo! Jez is on talk. Brilliant. Made a great day better. Thought he'd be having the day off, the lazy git. That's nice. Hello to Brad in Cambridge. Jez, how the heck can we have a party in government where half their members are encouraging and emboldening the public to ignore the law? Absolutely. Despite Starmer, the Labour Party is still just a bunch of student activists and anarchists. Brad, I could not agree more. Andy in Derbyshire, good afternoon, my friend. Absolutely agree with you, Jez. That coward Starmer will not say anything to upset the lefty activist Labour voters, and the police could have arrested those defacing statues at the same time, but chose not to. To say they are now pursuing them is utter garbage. Hello to... Really? The weirdest thing I've done for money is to donate my sperm to a scientific study in Oxford. The pay was £50 for free samples. To be honest, 50 quid back then in 2004 was a bit more money than it is today. Right, good. Moving swiftly on for reasons I'm not going into. Hello, Margaret. Katy is certainly working from home, but not helping pensioners with their winter fuel payment. The mind boggles, says Margaret in Birmingham. Yes. Afternoon, Jez. How the heck can we have a party in government? We've done that already. Thank you. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. And just while we're apparently sorting out the phones, send us a WhatsApp. 0344 499 1000. You can talk about Starmer, you can talk about Miliband, you can talk about Donald Trump, but really what we want to know is what's the strangest thing that you've done for money? I don't care if it's fruity, I'm that bored. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Now, I am so pleased to have on a lady who always brings a smile to my face, the Director of Campaigns for Sex Matters. Hey, Macarena. Fiona, good afternoon, how are you?
Hi, Jeremy.
Seriously, this is me at my most serious. How dare our Prime Minister, who spent his entire time pontificating about how we should all respect the law, don't disagree with that, who uses any law, it seems, from any court in Europe or across the world to further his own agenda, has steadfastly refused to back publicly what was decided in the Supreme Court 5 days ago. And over the weekend, Fiona, we hear, yes, he might be under pressure, but there is a WhatsApp group, apparently, where certain front bench cabinet ministers are already plotting to try and find a way to actively undo this. I find this utterly astonishing, don't you?
Well, we know what trans activists are like, so their behaviour is no surprise. You know, we've seen an angry mob of men basically on the street shouting that they're going to pee everywhere and they're not going to respect the rule of law and they're not going to respect women's rights and women's boundaries. That's no surprise. What I hope we'll see tomorrow is senior ministers coming out with the same clarity that they had when we got the CAS review. So you will remember a year ago, the CAS review said no more puberty blockers for children. It's harmful. They're not born in the wrong body. There are all kinds of reasons why they're unhappy or confused, but blocking their puberty is not going to help them. And that was unpopular with the trans crowd. But the government made an immediate statement. They said, we fully accept this review. We will stand behind it. We will implement it. That's what we need to see from this government. They need to say, the Supreme Court has spoken. It's perfectly clear. Sex means you're a man or a woman. There's nothing in between. Nobody can change. So now let's get on with it.
But you know and I know that the government that you're talking about, and I was as critical of them as anybody, which of course was the old Tory government, we're talking about a Labour Party that's foundations are so varied and so... There are so many different parts of support for the Labour Party that I said it when he came to power. He was going to be juggling the whole time. He's terrified of the left wing. He's terrified of the trans lobby. He's terrified. I don't think he will come out. But my point is this. This is the Prime Minister of this land. At the weekend, we have people already texting saying, you know, I mean, the police are allegedly searching for people who defaced 7 monuments. So suddenly we get into that huge debate about two-tier policing, because it seems that you can be arrested, and I'm not sticking up for Lucy Connolly what she wrote, but she's gone in prison for 31 months for writing some hurty words, and yet you can deface something and the police are doing nothing. You talked, when you first started, you said to me, we all know how, you know, switched on, hard, difficult and boisterous this trans activist lobby is. But they aren't right in all that they say. They're not. So why aren't the police, why aren't our government saying, no, we're not falling for this? I'm sorry. There is a steadfast decision that's been made. The thing is, this doesn't... To me, it's like the whole sport debate we've had. I as a father of a teenage girl, am very strong about the fact that I don't want... And I was watching something over the weekend, a man in a dress in a female changing room. And one of these activists was on television and saying, so you're assuming that all trans people are male rapists? And I just sat there and I thought, you can't have a discussion, can you, with these people? I don't understand, apart from believing that it's been hijacked by a mob. And I'm being completely honest. I don't have anything against trans people. I just don't understand why it's become... such a powder keg of argument, and how people can't see the reality of what they're talking about, Fiona.
Well, that's the one good thing about what's happened on the streets this weekend, Jeremy. If you look at those people with their aggression and their vandalism and their banners calling for women like me who oppose them, their demands to be in women's spaces, to be harmed, it should be clear to everyone that this is a movement in which some men want to deny decency and privacy and even safety to women who oppose them. It's very clear. I don't know why the police can't catch them, because they're on the streets. It's pretty open. I mean, they were out there policing those protests. But what I do know, and this is what should give courage to the politicians, is anytime now we do any polling where we ask a sample of the British population what they think about this, it's very clear that everyone says people should live in decency, they shouldn't be harassed, they shouldn't be discriminated against. But there are places where women need male-free space, male-free services, male-free sport, and it doesn't matter how you dress or how you identify, you do not belong. And that's the mainstream view. So, you know, if the government wants to be popular, actually, that's the way to be popular, is to back this ruling.
I didn't have a chance to say this to you over the last couple of weeks. This really matters to me, and I'd love your response. Your organisation sticks up for women's rights, and actually we've spoken for a couple of years, and I've always believed that's a really important thing. All those... a lot of female rights activists, without naming people, have gone, well, you don't hear from them. When it comes to that question, there are women who feel at danger or in case they could be violent. That's their decision. Why do those people who argue so vehemently and correctly for women's rights completely shut off and say zilch when it comes to the trans debate? Is it fear of being taken on? Is it fear of upsetting the status quo? Or why do I not hear from those people, Fiona?
Well, it is extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, I'm not sure we've heard from the Fawcett Society, and it's a statue of Millicent Fawcett after whom they're named that's been defaced in the name of so-called trans rights. We have had to set up grassroots groups across the UK because the funded groups, the official, in some cases, government-funded groups, are not doing their job. What are they afraid of? I don't know. But, you know, they certainly have shown a lack of courage, and I don't think they're doing their job.
Do you think, just very quickly, that following the Supreme Court ruling, whether or not Starmer has the courage or the political nous to come out and back it, do you think that organisations, there was a story that trans NHS patients over the weekend can access every woman-only space in London, do you think that the law will mean there will be a change, or do you think this will become a legal minefield?
I think that it's very clear. The Equality and Human Rights Commission has been the one organisation in the last week that's come out strongly and said, OK, the law's clear now. We need to rework our code so that everyone understands that a women's space or female-only ward means no one male. So if the NHS trusts do not revise their guidance and their policies very swiftly, they're going to be facing more legal challenges, that's for sure, because the law is crystal clear. So good to have you on. Happy Bank Holiday Monday to you. Fiona McInerney, Director of Campaigns at the excellent Sex Matters. Thank you very much indeed. 18 minutes to 5. We're live across the UK. If you're trying to ring us, the phones are buggered. We're doing our best, so you can send a WhatsApp 0344 499 1000 to Ryan. You can text 87222. We're back in 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Morning Glory, steady way to wake up. Mike Graham from 6, Monday to Friday, only here on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Hello to Brenda. The strangest thing I've done for money, Jez, is I worked in a school kitchen. That was great. Jez, if no one is arrested and jailed for calling for the death of TERFs and for vandalising monuments during the recent protests in London, it surely highlights how this country has a two-tier corrupt legal system. Yeah, two-tier policing, two-tier justice. The whole world's gone barking bloody mad. What is it? 4:45. If you are tuning in, not our fault. Slight problem with the telephone lines. Well, it's a disaster. Oh, hold on a second. Let's get a fanfare out. They're working. You can ring right now. Prize for the first one. 0344. You can have a Bourbon biscuit. 0344 499 1000. What is the strangest thing you've done for money? This is on the back of that extraordinary story about Katy, who's a civil servant in the DWP, the Department of Work and Pensions. You're supposed to ring up Katy and say, how do I get my pension sorted. Turns out Katy doesn't really give a damn. I nearly said toss, but you'll understand why in a second, why I have to remove that word, because Katy has been moonlighting. Whilst talking to you about her pension, her followers have been watching live on X-Hamster while she promises to talk dirty, flash, role play, go topless and strip tease for your delectation. Katy's a civil servant by day, but also, you know, she might do that by night, but she doesn't. She does that by day as well. We're paying for that. So what is the strangest thing you, my friends, have done for money? 0344 499 1000. Now let's bring it back to the main news story of the day, that very sad news that the Pope Francis, has died. The first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church has died at the age of 88. This was released earlier, an outpouring of obvious sadness and upset. 1.4 billion Catholics across the globe. We're delighted to be joined by Alexander Stafford, former chairman, actually, of the a parliamentary group to the Holy See. He led a delegation of UK parliamentarians to meet the Pope as well, former Conservative MP. Alexander, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Sad day, and I think you have to put into context. We were talking about this in the office. 1.4 billion Catholics across the world.
Yeah, this is a sad day for all Catholics, but not just Catholics. I think this is especially true of this Pope, or the Pope who just died. He was a visionary and literally led the world on so many conversations, whether it was attitudes to the poor, attitudes to poverty, to climate change, to the environment, to refugees. You may not like his stance on some of this, but he used his position as Pope to make a political message which echoed across the world, not just for Catholics.
Was he the most political Pope in your mind?
Well, I would also put in context, the Pope is not just the spiritual leader of Catholics. He also literally controls a state. He is literally the head of Vatican City. And in the past, the papal territory was a lot bigger than one city. It covered lots of cities, lots of land. So popes have always been political. But was he the most political Pope in the last couple of decades? Yes. But then you go back to John Paul II, and I think a lot of people put back to what he did to fight against communism and help actually end communism. So a different sort of politician, no doubt, but he was highly political and especially wanted to be a 21st century Pope for 21st century people.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because there's an old-fashioned view, and it might be shared by people in the Catholic Church and with other religions, that politics and religion should be very separate. But you just said it yourself there, the world's changed, right? And there's a certain entwining between politics and religion. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I think if you want to stay relevant in the 21st century, you have to actually show you're doing something and make a voice. And I think what's going to be really interesting is whoever takes over as the new Pope, whether they continue what he is doing, what he has done, especially his campaigns, or whether they more revert into the theological side of things. I think it'd be very hard for a new Pope not to actually embrace politics now, because once that cat has been released, other popes will have to actually be measured by that. But the question is, which way is it going to go? Is it going to go to the more liberal theological way, talking about climate change, refugees, or more conservative aspects, talking more about things like abortion or assisted dying or that like? So it'll be very interesting who the new pope's going to be.
Do you think that will affect the choice of the new pope? We all know what happens. It takes up an age, and there's this very formal situation in terms of how the new pope is elected. You talked about how he embraced politics, talked about things that other popes had never spoken. Do you think, in terms of when they're considering who would take over, that would be at the forefront of their mind?
It's going to make a huge difference. And you've got to remember, the people who are eligible to vote for and become the Pope, the overwhelming majority of them have been appointed by Pope Francis. Very few were appointed under previous popes. The vast majority are those who are Pope Francis's people he put in. And it's more likely than not that he chose people who had shared a similar worldview. So I'll be very surprised if we have, let's say, a very arch-conservative Pope as next, because by dint of the people Pope Francis put in, they're not that way inclined. But there's a lot of horse trading. I think, I've been an MP, I've seen horse trading in Westminster. That's nothing compared to what goes on in the papal curia and the political machinations about who's going to choose the Pope in charge of 1.4 billion people. The stakes are so high.
10 to 5, loads of other things going on in the world. Obviously, if people want to talk about that, 0344 499 1000. You just touched upon horse trading. Explain to me, as a former Tory MP, what you make of our Prime Minister who is constantly telling us how the law should be upheld. In fact, anybody who seems to complain about their toenails being trodden on should be, you know, hung, drawn and quartered. Under rightly, I think, mounting pressure to publicly back the Supreme Court's gender ruling of 5 days ago that a woman can't have a penis, and yet our Prime Minister has said and done nothing. We hear over the weekend there's apparently already a WhatsApp group amongst front bench Labour MPs saying, how can we get past the law? This is appalling. It's absolutely appalling. Whether you agree with the judgment or not, surely our Prime Minister has to back it, Alexander.
Well, of course he does. And if, let's say, he wants to go have a political discussion, debate in Westminster, try and change the law, that's one thing. But if you're saying I'm going to ignore the law or allow my MPs or ministers to try and get around the law as described by the courts, that's absolutely disgraceful. Lawmakers should not be lawbreakers. They should be enforcing the law, making the law tighter, potentially, but not saying how can we get around it. I think this is bizarre. And the fact I don't think we've heard anything from Keir Starmer about this ruling is crackers, absolutely crackers. He's allowed to talk about other things. Why not one of the biggest issues, one of the biggest rulings for the last, you know, how many months, which affects half the population, women? Why is he not doing anything? It's
because
weird.
He's terrified of a certain section of his party, as he always is. Alexander Stafford, former chairman, vice chairman of the Tory party, former Conservative MP, thank you very much indeed. Led the delegation of MPs to visit the Pope, Pope Francis, sadly passing today at 88 years of age. It's 8 minutes to 5.
So here's an Easter egg with the word... Oh, hang on. Oh, no. They've left the word Easter out.
It's on the top.
Can you see that?
It's on...
Why?
They're hiding it.
They've got it up there.
They've hidden it.
But why isn't it on the front? It just says Cadbury's cream egg. Doesn't say anything about Easter. So I may have to stop buying Cadbury's chocolate, which I was probably keeping their company afloat.
It's American now anyway, since Peter Mandelson sold it for
It's not an Eid egg.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
5 to 5, we're live across the UK. The phone lines are working on Talk 0344 499 1000. We're going to Derbyshire. You've got to be quick. You've got 1 minute. Garfield, go.
Go. Right. In the 70s, I worked at a 5-minute car wash, and the circus brought an elephant in, and we had to wash it. In the same year, I had to drive drive a car shaped like an outspan orange, advertising a new nightclub in Halifax called the Disco Boutique Off. So, and I had to drive it all around, and I got paid for them both. Washing the elephant, I gave it to charity.
Have you ever seen Mrs. Brown's Boys?
No.
You know the son who dresses up and does weird jobs? You sound like him. That's brilliant. You washed an elephant in a car wash. You're in prime position, Garfield in Derbyshire. Thank you very much indeed. A voice note. James, go.
Hello, Jeremy. The strangest thing I've ever done for money. Once I was out of work and my dad said, come home, he got you a job. And it was boning pigs' heads. And you see these pigs' heads fly along the metal cans, and you chop their ears, chop their nose off, and all that. It was absolutely disgusting filth. And anyway, my first day, I'll never forget the first day, at 10 o'clock, breakfast time, they all went out to the van and got bacon sandwiches. Oh,
She's out. Could you explain?
I went in the phone box quiet to my dad, please, can I come home?
Get off. Can you explain to me why in the middle of that on the screen it says private pensions and twerk? Honestly, just get rid of all of that. We've got private pensions and a bloke's talking about making a pig's ear of a bacon sandwich. To the phone lines in London. Georgina, hello, darling, how are you?
Hello, my darling. Well, I'm not as good as you. You're looking fabulous as ever. And my husband's playing golf, so I was just jogging and the phone went and it was you.
Sorry, I played 9 holes this morning and fell down 3 of them. Bob, crack on, George. We got 2 minutes. Come on.
Right, I think it's a great idea that Donald Trump go to Westminster for the simple reason is he will give them the full pedigree. We need someone to stand up and speak for us, Jez. Honestly, the Labour Party have had a free reign with this country. They brought this country to its knees, and no one has made them accept responsibility or take accountability for their actions. He is the man that will do it. I'm sick of having a 3-legged racehorse in this country, ruling this country. We need a Derby winner, and Nigel Farage is that man. Honestly, the country is on its knees. Everyone's frightened to say anything because he'll be arrested.
Yep.
And no one wants to say anything in the Houses of Parliament because they don't get asked questions by the Speaker of the House because he's always off on his holidays at our expense. So let Donald Trump come, let him give them the full pedigree, and let's see where it goes from there. It's about time, and I can't wait to see the faces when he does.
You heard this story, I completely agree. You know the story about the twerking pensions? The DWP civil servant advisor filmed exposing her boobs and flashing fans on a porn site. You've only got 30 seconds. What's the weirdest thing? God, I don't know why I'm asking this. What's the weirdest thing you've ever done for money, Georgina?
Do you know what? I've never done anything weird for money. I've always kept it clean.
Have you? It doesn't have to be. Sorry, it doesn't have to be dirty. It could be, you know, I made some cakes at an old people's home. It doesn't have to be pornography.
Actually, I have made biscuits to raise cash for children in need. That's what I did. That's the strangest thing. I'm very boring, Jez. I'm a housewife, very boring. But that's the.
Yeah, I know what though. You see, money. You're pretending to be, but you probably bake them in the nude. I'm going. Georgina, thank you very much indeed. Cooking in the nude, only here on Talk Drive. Jodie has announced that she and her boyfriend have a joint OnlyFans page. So we'll be talking about that in the next hour. Big Cam is all I'm saying. He's right on Cam. 0344 419 1000 is the telephone number. You can WhatsApp us. What's the strangest thing you've done for money? You want to talk Trump? You want to talk Farage? You can talk about whatever you want because the phone lines are working. We're live across the UK. This is Talk Drive on a bank holiday Monday. Shut up, you. 0344 419 1000. Text to 87222. We, my friends, will do the news at 5, which is next. How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10p, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60p. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks
How
ago.
much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back hour 2 of Drive for Bank Holiday Monday. What the hell's Kyle doing on air? I hear you scream. Well, I'll tell you what, it was this, or what's it called? Peppa Pig World. Yes, I have more kids than Boris Johnson, but the thought of that in the afternoon in a cagoule. You know those things they wear when it's raining? Those plastic things at football matches? What is the point of that? Honestly. Anyway, so here I am. Welcome along. Thank you for tuning in. The home of free speech and common sense. You would talk, of course, we're live across the UK, and the phone lines are finally working. They expect me to do an hour on this station with the phone lines not working. They're now working. Please get involved, please. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Our Jodie, who has officially announced that she and her boyfriend Cam have a what do they have? An OnlyFans channel called Big Cam. There you go. Anyway, no, I'm joking. Anyway, she's taking your calls, 0344 499 1000. You can WhatsApp and leave a voice note for Ryan, who's a Watford fan, so he's used to being disappointed. Imagine if he was on OnlyFans, his wife would be very disappointed. 0344 499 1000. Or you can send a text, 87222. Start your message with the word talk. We've loads of serious stuff to talk about. Obviously, very sad news about Pope Francis. There's many people wanting to talk about that. There's people wanting to talk about Keir Starmer not responding to that gender ruling 5 days ago. People are upset about Ed Miliband. Why wouldn't you? He's an idiot. He thinks we all want net zero. Read the room. There's a bunch of MPs who are already plotting to stop Donald Trump coming to this country. My view would only be democratically love him or hate him. The biggest vote for an American president in decades has a right to come here. Deal with it. But my favourite story of the day, and I make no apology for this, it's how I get through a bank holiday, is the Twerk and Pensions story, which is a civil servant has been filmed moonlighting. She's supposed to pick up the phone and go, "Hello, Mr. Kyle, yes, about your pension, which is screwed and non-existent because the world's gone on its arse." Oh, sorry, hold on a second. Whilst giving me this advice, it turns out that Katy was moonlighting following something called Ex-Hamster, which is slightly weird. It's something to do with animals. But anyway, she's stripping and talking dirty and role-playing, topless, and will eat things and do very... Why did I say eat things? It doesn't say this here. It sounds like I've got some sort of experience of this. Anyway, Katy is a civil servant, but actually Katy is also moonlighting as a bit of a dirty mare, to be fair. So we thought we'd just say, on bank holiday, what's the weirdest thing that you've done for money? 0344 499 1000. My good friend Mark in Northamptonshire, I said that, I've never met him, said when I lived abroad, my friend wanted to divorce his wife. I wrote the letter, he signed it, and all good. He got the divorce and he bought me 2 bottles of gin for my services. So there you are. Who says you need to be a lawyer? I probably could have saved a bloody fortune in the past if I'd used Mark in Northants, but there we go. Johnny's in Yorkshire. Somebody's got to be. Johnny, Jez, weirdest thing I've done for money is working 5 days a week running my own decorating business and paying my dues in taxes. What a weird and wonderful world it is that you would ever do that. Julie in Taunton. Afternoon, Jez. Read the topic about trans. I think you are right to be concerned about your daughter's safety when a bloke goes into the changing room when your daughter is there. I would also feel that I'm in danger of being in that situation if a bloke was in the change room. You've put a tack. Now, the reason I just want to pick you up on that is I saw something over the weekend and a trans activist said, so you're assuming that all people who are trans are going to attack women. I don't think it's that. I just think it's, and again, I would say this to women's rights campaigners, it's about women feeling comfortable, isn't it? And if a woman is saying that, this isn't me saying it, it's women saying it. Jez, to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary, Jesus, 50 years! Double murder, you can get less with best behaviour, can't you? Anyway, my wife and I had a trip to London and ate at a nice restaurant. Wimpy, apparently. No. After visiting the toilet, my wife was very upset, genuinely, because there were men in there and she was worried about the young girls and their safety. Good point, John. Lisa Price is not right. See what I did there? Great show. Funny that Labour MPs are calling Trump a liar. This government lied its way into power. People in glass houses and all that, yep. Vincent Morris. I once got paid to wring the sponge out for a one-armed window cleaner. Says Vincent. 0344 419 1000. What's the weirdest thing you've done for money? I can ask my next guest this because this man puts the class in everything. He'll be relaxing in his country pile, probably in a he's had a snifter. Very good afternoon, Benedict Spence. How are you? Yes.
Yeah, I'm well, thank you, Jeremy. How are you doing?
What's the weirdest thing you've done for money?
I mean, honestly, it's probably coming on the radio and having to talk about men pretending to be women and how we were all supposed to take this seriously. If you were to sort of tell me that 10 years ago, you'd do that for money, I'd say, that's insane. And yet, here I am.
Very, very interesting. We'll talk to work and pensions in a minute. That story is, and I mean, people quite rightly wanted to show their respects to Pope Francis dying today, and we'll talk about that. But this story that really just won't go away, and of course it won't go away. Keir Starmer under mounting pressure, Benedict, which you'd understand. 5 days ago, the Supreme Court made that gender ruling on what a woman is. Quite why it took 5 years and millions of pounds, but there we go. The rest of the world are going, ha-ha, the United Kingdom, it took them that long. Jesus, it took us 2 minutes. But we're there. We saw what happened at the weekend. Trans rights activists defacing London monuments, including the statue of suffragette Millicent Fawcett. Not a word. Police didn't arrest these people. Starmer, silent, messaging apparently on WhatsApp at the weekend between government ministers. How can we go against this? And yet you've got this guy, this Prime Minister, who spends his entire time using whatever law he can from whatever land, it seems, and whatever time in the world to get his own way. I find it extraordinary, Benedict.
It's not only, I mean, what you just sort of explained there is yet another example of two-tier policing. I can't imagine most people would just be allowed to sort of go around defacing public property and saying some of the things that these protesters have been saying, you know, for many other causes. So that's, you know, two-tier policing. But there's also a two-tier interpretation of the court system and the legal system, which is that, you know, for very often we're told by this government and other politicians that we have to sort of respect courts. And, you know, I'll give you one example being the International Court decision on the Chagos Islands saying, well, maybe the UK should give it to Mauritius, at which point the British government under Keir Starmer clicks into gear going, oh, yes, we have to absolutely obey the court and listen to the court because the court is always right. And here we have an example of a court saying, well, OK, this is a really black and white thing, really clear, really easy. And the very same MP is going, how can we not do this? How on earth can we possibly avoid doing this thing? Yeah, and that's the thing. When it's one set of court decisions that they like, they will happily go along with it to the detriment of the country. When it's ones that they don't, they will do whatever they can to try and ignore it.
But that is disgusting, Benedict. The thing is, I don't know, because I'm getting old, whether we had this discussion last week. My approach to this whole trans debate, and it is perfectly fair enough to say this has been hijacked by activists, because it happens the whole time. My example is I haven't got an issue. Not at all. Haven't got to. What I've an issue with is my daughter, my teenage daughter, being in a changing room when an Isla Bryson is allowed to come in. Or my daughter, like Russell Quirk's daughter, who's got to the point where she's the #1 ranked paddle player in the United Kingdom for her discipline, which is an extraordinary achievement. There is a risk that transsexuals, men who are stronger, will be in that. That, to me, is common sense. But you get piled on and people jump up and down. My question to you, as I put to everybody all the time, is where are the women's rights activists and commentators at that moment sticking up for women's rights who are telling us in their droves we don't feel safe?
It's a very tricky one, isn't it? Because actually for decades, men were told you can't, as men, have opinions on certain women's issues because they're women's issues, not men. And that was a sort of a characteristic of the latest wave of feminism that we had. And now, as a result of their, deconstructivist ideas about gender, they themselves now find themselves in a position where they are having to combat a very vociferous, very small minority of people. I think people forget quite how small the trans community really is. A matter of between 5,000 and 10,000 people in a nation of tens of millions. But that very small group of people is sort of waging war on this issue very successfully up until now. And, we do hear this actually. I've had this conversation on Talk with other presenters before, and they say, well, where are the men standing up for this? And the men sort of sit there and go, I thought that this was nothing to do with us. You told us that women's issues are nothing to... And now that it's a group that you're kind of, dithering around, oh, are they men, are they women, we're not sure, then you suddenly think, oh, maybe it would be nice if we had the majority on our side, but we've already told half the population they're not allowed a view on this. But you're completely right on the subject of particularly young girls and when it comes to biological differences. And this is the thing that always sets it up for me. If trans women really were women and they really understood what it was to be a woman, they would sympathize. They would sympathize with those younger girls, with those more vulnerable women, and they would go, actually, their safety takes precedence over my feelings because I come with, let's use that word, certain privileges. I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'm XYZ. So I should understand as a woman, as part of the sisterhood, what that is. But what we actually see is incredibly masculine, entitled behavior of people going, look at me, I'm important. The sort of behavior that actually the average woman doesn't tend to exhibit.
No, I couldn't agree more. And then, we had this sort of message today, didn't we, released to the press, the police are hunting for trans right activists who deface those 7 London monuments, but nothing from the Fawcett Society. The police are apparently hunting for them. Why the hell didn't they arrest them on Saturday? But we're back there again. That will lead people to quite rightly say, are the police in a position now where they are terrified to make arrests or begin investigations? I still recoil in horror when I remember the police in Rotherham saying it's taken us 8 years because we were worried about investigating too strongly and in too much depth about the child rape gangs because we feared it would create tension. What does that tell you then? So what if you're part of a group that can make a lot of noise, the police are going to let you off? That's appalling.
Yeah, it's what happens when you buy into the sort of oppression Olympics view of the world. XYZ number of groups are oppressed, therefore they need special treatment. And then it's just a race to the bottom because literally every group will find a reason for itself to be oppressed, apart from one. And we all know which group that is that ends up, suffering as a result. But it does mean that the police that tend to be made up, let's not forget, of predominantly white men, they are in a really difficult position because as the one group that isn't protected, so to speak, but is supposed to be the one imposing justice, imposing the law, upholding the law, they're in a really difficult position, especially if they're also then being told from on high, from politicians, from advisors, from NGOs, oh, this is oppression, this is bigotry, this is racism, this is sexism. I'm sorry, but a police officer's job is complex enough as it is, without them having to navigate this bizarre labyrinth of intersectional identity politics. We need to get back to the basics, which is that everybody is equal before the law. There is no special treatment.
Actually interesting, just very, very quickly, apparently there was an article this weekend that said that the police forces are beginning to question whether non-crime hate incidents help us fight crime. Lo and bloody behold, who'd have thought that hurty words were more important than rape? Or, hurty words were more important than violent crime and stabbings in London? That dreary, horrible human being. So what's he called? Is he Sir Sadiq Khan now? Ridiculous. ridiculous.
I think it is.
You know, deal with the appalling epidemic that is knife crime in your capital city that you are mayor of. Stop this showboating. I don't understand. I genuinely don't understand it. When I'm angry, though, there's one bigger target than Keir Starmer. Can you guess who that is?
Ed Miliband.
Well done, Benedict Spence.
Oh,
right
it is.
on the cue. How, apart from the fact that I think he's nuts, is he? Because actually, it was quite interesting that Richard Tice said earlier. I think he felt he was under pressure. Because here's the thing: he's attacked Farage. That's his right. He's attacked. He's basically said to all of us who criticise stupid net zero that we don't really understand that the majority of people in the United Kingdom are concerned and want to be net zero by 2026, probably, according to him, despite the fact we're skint and it will bankrupt us.
I think he has nailed this ideology to the mask as being the thing that he will be remembered for. Because, of course, up until this point, he was going to be remembered for stabbing his brother in the back and being a very unsuccessful Labour leader.
Hold on. And an inability to eat a sandwich. That's how famous he is, yeah.
Yeah. No, okay. So that's three things. The holy trinity of ineptitude. That was what he was going to be remembered for. But he, latched onto this idea that was backed by the United Nations and all of these different bodies and movements. And he thought, this is going to be what makes me. I'm going to be remembered in the same way that Nye Bevan is remembered perhaps for the creation of the NHS very fondly. He was going to be remembered as the guy that pushed through this agenda to decarbonise, and we were going to be at the forefront. And now that he starts to see not just the popularity of net zero plummeting in this country, but other countries around the world, frankly, just abandoning it. China, Russia, the United States, they've all effectively gone, yeah, this isn't working, it's not going to happen. So the tide is turning. He can see his legacy slipping away between his fingers. So it's understandable that he's going to turn around and try and fight to, wrest back control of this. The problem is, as you've sort of alluded to, the public is waking up to the fact that this is A, very inefficient, and B, incredibly expensive.
And I think that's the point. Somebody said to me the other day, you're not really appreciating, Jez, how important the climate crisis is. And I joke and I say that's for the next generation. But for me, it's about priorities. I use that word on this show probably more than any other word. And I think the impact of COVID and the cost of living crisis and so many things have made people, the immigration crisis have made people go, hold on a minute. So I live my life correctly, I pay my bills, I'm about 8th in the queue behind, it seems, immigrants, people who commit crimes. We've got a government that's trying to balance every single book with every weird ideology in the world, and now they're telling me they're going to make me even more skint to chase some sort of dream that isn't achievable. Well, it's a load of old crap. That's what I think a lot of... Now, maybe I'm wrong, right? But that, to me, is where people are at, in their majority. Would you agree with that?
I think that you notice that they use the expression climate crisis now. They've had to stop using climate change because things weren't changing enough. They weren't changing fast enough. So they had to use slightly more catastrophic language. But they've had to do that. And, they are becoming ever more hysterical on this. And the irony of all of this is that actually climate change is not the major issue. Pollution is. Pollution causes all kinds of diseases. It destroys food chains. You want to know why cancer rates are through the roof? There's your answer. But they focused on completely the wrong thing. They've gone, the weather is going to change. It's not changing fast enough. Let's get hysterical about it, rather than the thing that is actually killing people. But, as you say, if you're going to double down on that and the idea that climate is the thing, most people, I think, actually think, broadly speaking, that the way to deal with the climate changing is probably to adapt and is to be smart about it rather than to regress back in time. And they certainly don't think that getting poorer in the short term is going to help them. And that, I'm afraid, is what climate catastrophists, if you like, are selling to people. You're going to be poorer, you're just going to have to get on with it, it's a moral good, and never mind the cancer rates or anything like that, never mind how expensive it is, you'll feel better about yourself because the climate will change just a little more slow.
But that's my point, right? That's exactly my point. You will feel better about yourself. The thing about this country that I've always thought is that for years, morally, ethically, the United Kingdom led the way. We did the right thing by foreign countries, by the law, by everything. We were the sort of bastions of what was right. That's down the bog. In my humble opinion, people are going, right, all of that, that's why we've got an issue with migrants in this country, because people are going, sorry, at this moment in time, however bad this sounds, charity begins at home. I want less ideology. I need you to be considering what's right for me and my family and my life. And if that isn't as I was in the past, I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and the other thing, of course, is if you want to have charity, if you want to be a generous country, you need the wealth in order to be charitable in the first place. And what everybody who is a business owner in this country, and all the listeners will tell you, and have been saying for a very long time, fundamentally, if food is too expensive, if energy is too expensive, that is what puts the brakes on growth. And without that growth, there goes NHS spending, there goes social spending, there goes everything to do with care. That's the problem right there. So as much as you might want to feel good about the climate, actually that downstream, those costs are stopping you from doing all the other good things that you want to do in society. Oh, and by the way, it's not actually improving the climate anyway.
Absolutely, and it isn't achievable. Let's finish as we started with the twerk and pension story. It's your favourite story of the day, I know that. Katy, who's supposed to advise you on your pension, is sat there in a thong, talking dirty, flashing, playing role play, topless and strip-teasing. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a civil servant, has been filmed moonlighting on a porn site whilst giving advice to sad, upset people about how their pensions are being destroyed. I was thinking if it all goes completely wrong for us, Benedict, because Jodie's already set up an OnlyFans page with Cam, it's called Big Cam, honestly, would you consider this, do you think, if it all went wrong?
I mean, would I consider it? I tell you what, run a poll. Would your listeners actually consider subscribing to an OnlyFans of mine?
Well, we know what we call it.
I'd be peddling.
We know what we call it, don't we? Be Big Ben. See, see what I'm saying. But can I tell you how posh Benedict Spence is? Why do you know he's posh just by looking at him? He's got drapes, ladies and gentlemen. That is posh. Mr. Benedict, seriously, on a bank holiday, we really appreciate it. The excellent Benedict Spence, live and exclusive on Talk Drive. What is it, 5:22? We're live across the UK. There's a guy pushing the buttons today. We go back a long way. He's looking at me as if I have literally landed on a spacecraft from Mars. This is because he sits there usually and it's just like that. And I've got him right on his toes because he's trying to guess when we're going to go to a break. But you know, we'll see if you're any good. 0344 419 1000 is the only number you need. Text me 87222. This is Talk Drive.
Putin does not like President Trump. I know everybody's trying to make it out as though they're buddies. They're not. President Trump is the president of the greatest nation in the world, the United States of America. Russia has a dictator president and will kill off their enemies, kill off their political enemies. It is a mafia, and they are attacking innocent people in Ukraine. We need to make sure we're protecting Ukraine, because protecting Ukraine is America first. Russia will not stop with Ukraine. They will keep going.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
To get through a bank holiday Monday afternoon, 5:25. We're live across the UK. This is JK. I don't know about you, but we do drive, right? And the guy that usually does the traffic and travel is very stoic in his performance, is all I'm going to say. Today we have Johnny Ratner, who used to run a jewellery business, called it crap, and that was the end of it. Johnny's the most excitable person. Well, it's the M40, and we've got... It's extraordinary. It's just like... commentating on a horse race. We love Johnny Ratner. Let's get him on the show. Let's get Johnny Ratner. Ryan, the world's tallest producer, is rather affronted that Jodie and her boyfriend Cameron have got an OnlyFans site called Steadicam or Big Cam. He and his wife like to cook Sunday lunch together. They took a picture of their roast yesterday with a gravy jug. Well, there were 2 jugs, so he wants to call it 2 jugs. I'm not getting involved. 0344 499 1000. Hello, Crystal. Just the strangest job I ever had. I was a stuffer. All right. Children would bring over the skin of the stuffy they wanted. Oh, this is Build-A-Bear. And I would put its backside on a pipe that would pump stuffing into it. I, along with the children, were traumatised for several reasons. This is the Build-A-Bear thing, where you have to stick the pipe up its backside and fill it full of fur. All the dads are going like that. Jodie's just going... That's not what happens on my OnlyFans page. 0344 499 1000. Of course, listen, we are here to entertain. Hello to Brenda in Darlington. I did a parachute jump to raise money for a special needs school. Bless you. Oh, landed on the tarmac and broke my bones in my foot. That's not great, is it? Sorry. Oh, God. Sue says, I went chicken catching. I beg your pardon. Sorry. Good. It lasted 3 hours and my hands looked like a pair of blown-up rubber gloves. Never went back, but I needed a job, and frankly, I would try anything. What are you doing trying to catch chickens, for goodness sake? Just set up Oh, this is my favourite. This is from Dave Dobson. There's actually somebody called Dave Dobson. He says, when I first became a civil servant 27 years ago, we had to ask to do certain things. I even had to ask permission to go and watch Top of the Pops. Now you can set up a porn website. What's happened? I nearly did a joke that even I would have got in trouble for there. 528 0344 499 1000. We are going live to, I would say, the greatest royal commentator ever. A woman who puts the smile in everything she does. She is live in LA. Or possibly she's not. Kinsey Schofield, my radio wife. Good afternoon and happy Bank Holiday Monday.
Good to see you, radio husband. I am live from LA.
You are. Now, we managed to get on Jimmy Kimmel by being particularly fruity. So, there's a story I want to get on Jimmy Kimmel again, although I prefer the other one. What's the other one I prefer? Because Kimmel's a bit woke for me. What's the other one?
Oh, you like Jimmy Fallon?
I do like Jimmy Fallon, yeah. Twerk and pensions. Have you heard this story? It's extraordinary. So we have government officials here, and they get paid by the taxpayer to advise people. One such thing would be a mortgage. Do you have mortgages in America? Do you have a mortgage in America?
We do,
oh,
yes.
Yes. So you take out a mortgage, and then you have a pension, and you save, and that's worth jack nowadays because the government are rubbish. Anyway, so there's this helpline where you get on the phone, I'm really worried about my pension and I've got no money. And a woman is or a man, before anybody jumps up and down, is supposed to say, don't worry about it, it'll be fine, we should do this, we should do that. Katie is, in fact, a civil servant, but she's been moonlighting, Kins, on a porn site. So whilst giving advice to me about my pension, Katie has been flashing to her followers live on X-Hamster. The woman who said she was called Katie would respond in such a way. One follower wrote, you were in a thong. Katie, in a dressing gown and a grubby T-shirt, replies, maybe. The follower writes back, this is very, very sexy. Tell me what you can do. Katie went, well, I don't know why I'm doing that voice. Right? Katie says, well, for a few quid, I'll talk dirty, I'll flash, I'll role play, I'll take my bra off and I'll do a striptease. And he's gone, this is true. This is true. So we ask you, Kinsey Schofield, just think of Jimmy Kimmel. What's the weirdest thing you've done for money?
I did a dating reality show where I had to dress up like Jessica Simpson. They put on Daisy Dukes and cowboy boots. And when I walked out, the boy I was supposed to go on a date with said I looked like 2 Jessica Simpsons. That was a fat joke. And then I had to say in front of the camera, I'm proud of the junk in my trunk.
That is, I don't know what to say. That is out. Who is this boy? I hope you turned to the camera and said, I wouldn't go near you, needle whatever. Did you? Did you stick up for yourself? Because I would have stuck up for you, Kinsey Schofield. This is outrageous. And let me tell you something, by the way. I don't know what I'm not allowed to say, am I? Junk in the trunk's a good thing.
I think it is too. That's why I said I was proud of it. But yeah, no, that was probably a low point for me.
How did we get from junk in the trunk to Prince Andrew?
I mean, that is a clear segue.
I think that's the better. Let's get to the bottom of the royal family, from Kinsey Schofield's bottom to a man who is a complete arse, the Duke of York. There was an extraordinary thing this Easter. There he was at the family Easter service, not trying to spread whatever. Extraordinary, and still leads me to believe that I'm right about this whole scenario, that he's got something over his brother, or his brother hasn't got the strength or the courage to finally cast him adrift. What did you make of it, on a serious note?
On a serious note, I think we should all applaud Prince Andrew for having his butt in church. I think that is the best place for Prince Andrew to be. I mean, to be fair, he is innocent until proven guilty. No judge or jury found him guilty of anything he's been accused of. But in the court of public opinion, it's guilt by association, and he did associate almost unapologetically with Jeffrey Epstein. So I understand why people don't want the king anywhere near him. But at the same time, are we really going to discourage a man from going into church? I don't believe that he is going to weasel his way back into being a working royal, because in every story that's ever written about him for the rest of his life, there will be a paragraph about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein at the bottom, and that is poison. The royal family, can't risk that. But I don't necessarily understand discouraging him from going to church. I think he needs a little bit of Jesus.
But of course he would have used that, because he is, on a serious note, somebody who absolutely will not ever accept that he did wrong. And I'm just going to try a different opinion with you. Lady Victoria Hervey is very outspoken online and on many television stations and radio stations about this case, has called out Virginia Giuffre for months and years, has called her a serial liar, and has garnered huge support for those views. I didn't get a chance to say this. I'm not condoning anything that did or didn't happen. She had 4 days to live 3 weeks ago, Virginia Giuffre. Apparently she's fine now. There's a lot of people who, at the same time, called a public opinion Prince Andrew, but are starting to doubt a lot of the people that have been involved in that story. Thoughts on that at all, do you think?
No, I think that's fair. I was mortified when I showed sympathy for Virginia Giuffre to discover that, she was still alive and kicking, and everyone associated with the incident was like, it was not that big of a deal. So I do think it's fair to ask questions about the authenticity of her events surrounding her relationship with Prince Andrew, who says he never saw the woman in real life. He said, I have no recollection of meeting her whatsoever.
To be honest, Victoria Hervey will tell you that the photographs are set up and everything. What I think is really interesting is your point. In the court of public opinion, he will never recover. Now, whether he's been stitched up, I would put it like this. I think he's an entitled idiot who, and I'm being completely serious, who doesn't read the room, who was always the favourite, who never ever was never realistic, right? And just carried on regardless. Never took a step back. Never thought I'm perhaps wrong relationship, wrong way of going about things, and it's sort of caught up with him. I don't buy Virginia Giuffre, and there's many, I'm sure, hundreds of famous men who could well be associated with what went on with Epstein. It's just he's just not very good at making the right decision. In royal circles, he's always been known as somebody that wants to make a fast buck and surrounds himself with the wrong people, and I think that years of doing that probably came back and bit him on the backside.
Yeah, I mean, the lack of self-awareness must be a DNA thing, because I see a lot of it, what you talk about, the arrogance, the lack of self-awareness. I see that in Prince Harry as well. So, like the quick buck, Prince Harry associating with people for cash that you probably shouldn't be. I've seen a little bit of that in Harry and Meghan as well, just trying to make a quick buck. So they're tearing into the royal family on international television. I agree with you. I'm firmly in the corner of he cannot come back as a working member of the British royal family, but I'm not going to tear him to pieces for showing up to church with his siblings. I know that his mother, the late Queen Elizabeth, would want him to be there. Oh, without any shadow of a doubt. And it would have been very interesting if this was 20 years ago and she was still around, because it's really interesting. That he was the favourite and he was almost excused, and there are many people who believe that was perhaps the reason that he turned out to be the way he was. Just to finish, despite the fact that I've had an email saying that you're a complete pain in the arse and you shouldn't be on talk. There you go. I should ignore that. It's fine. I can do with that. It's fine. Listen, shall I read it to you? Kyle, could we have less of your salacious and lecherous talk whilst on air? This is a primetime radio broadcasting, OK? Your rambunctious and frantic language sounds like verbal diarrhea. Oh, I love a good verbal diarrhea reference. Well, I was going to say that could have been from... That could have been from my mother, but she's dead. I was going to say, I think Kyle was the guy that told me that I was fat on the dating reality show. It must have been Kyle. Yes, precisely. What a dreadful name. Before we go, we made Jimmy Kimmel. Do you want to tell people how we did? Because this is quite relevant to the time of year. You were asking me my favorite chocolate. You demanded that it not be Hershey's, which I was like, don't worry, it's not Hershey's, it's Cadbury. And I told you I loved a good Cadbury cream egg. And you asked how I ate it, and I said I just put the whole thing in my mouth. And then Jimmy Kimmel went to town on that. And we not only made his weekly list, but we made his best of the year video montage. Obviously, it's Easter, so have you been putting them in your mouth quite a lot over the last few days? You heathen. Yes, absolutely. Fantastic. I love you. I'm sorry for the person who thinks that's salacious, but Kinsey's a friend of mine, and the only way to get through a bank holiday is to somehow have a laugh. Is it not, my darling? Amen. Amen. Happy Easter, sweet. Good to speak to you. Kinsey Schofield, live and exclusive. Talking about Prince Andrew there, actually. It's interesting. Duke of York. I suspect he probably believes that he will get back into the public eye. I don't think it'll ever happen. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Minutes to 6, Bank Holiday Monday. Welcome along. Hello to Tim. He says, Jez, you sounded like Boise. Deb B says, I know I ain't waxed my lip lately, but my name is Deb, not Dave. Oh, Dave is my builder's name. Oh, right. Debbie, right, I don't understand. Just, I was wondering if Ed Miliband has a heat pump and a solar panel on his house, as he seems to want to have everybody... I see, that's a really interesting one. I wonder, all these politicians who care about pontificating to us about all the things that are important, do they have the same? Hello to Simon. Now, this is really interesting, and I have set a bit of a challenge. I'm going to be honest with you here. He says, what's the betting that we'll see more two-tier policing this Wednesday, when it is, of course, St George's Day, and groups of working-class white lads decide to have a few celebratory beers in London whilst carrying or wearing St George's flags? We're going to watch this. My father-in-law is quite outspoken, and he, I can't go into detail, but lives in an area where the council let it be known that they frown upon that because it could be determined as perhaps anti-other religions, other groups. So he's going to plant a St George's flag in the middle of his front garden and wait to see what happens. We'll bring that to you. Hello to Sean in Gloucester. Good afternoon, JK. When I saw those protests at the weekend, it made my blood boil. For me, it's never a protest when vandalism happens. They need to be arrested and treated like the rioters last year. Sean, I agree with you. And of course, the thing is, when you get involved in that, people will say that you're being anti-trans or anti-whatever. I think you make a really salient point. If you commit vandalism, if you commit crime, Benedict said it, didn't he? The crime is the number one thing, that you get judged on that. It shouldn't be any other way. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to Gloucester, if that's OK. David, good afternoon, sir. You're on Talk Drive. Happy Bank Holiday Monday to you.
Happy Bank Holiday, Jeremy. How are we all?
I'm all right. Well. David, come on down. What you got me, old son?
Well, I was just thinking when you were just talking earlier about the whole trans debate, and where are all the activists, MPs like Jess Phillips and a few of the others, and various things that she has said? She's very pro-women, apparently. I think she's an absolute fraud, quite frankly.
I mean, Well, I know Jess Phillips, and I said it on air, I was shocked because Jess Phillips has been all about, quite rightly, women's rights. And I'll have that argument with anybody. I think she's done some incredible work. She used to stand up in Parliament and talk about women who have been stalked. That's great work. I could not... Listen, she's obviously got a job, and her boss has told her that 45 minutes before Parliament goes into recess, let's announce we're not doing, any inquiries into children who have been raped. We'll ignore that. And then you've got this Supreme Court ruling, and you've now got, actively it seems, MPs and ministers in the government, in the Labour Party, on WhatsApp groups trying to avoid following the law, which sets a precedent. My whole argument about the trans thing is I've nothing against trans people at all. Absolutely nothing whatsoever. What I think needs to be questioned, as you're saying, is where are all those activists who quite rightly argue and have argued for women's rights? Where are they when biological women are saying we don't want men who are transitioning and have a penis in a changing room? We don't want men who are transitioning with a penis in a female sport. I think that's perfectly fine, but you don't hear from them, do you? You don't hear from them.
No, you don't. And I was absolutely flabbergasted when they dropped the whole child sex, the whole thing with the investigations and what's it called? The whole...
the inquiry into... Yeah, absolutely. Well, they actually turned round. Well, they actually turned round in January, if you remember, and said we won't be having a national inquiry, which upset a lot of people. We'll be having 5 local ones. But then, as I say, 45 minutes before the Easter recess, Jess Phillips sort of under her breath said we won't be having those. We'll just be talking about it locally. I think it's a disgrace, and I think there is a real sort of hypocrisy amongst this government. And by the way, I'm not sitting here sticking up for the last government. They were an absolute joke at the end. But I suppose, like many others, I didn't believe what Labour said, but I thought that Labour had a point where they said they'd try and do things differently. David, great to have you. Happy Bank Holiday Monday. Let's go to East Yorkshire. Patrick, you're on Talk Drive. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Hello, Jez. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Apparently, one person texted me and said I'm salacious and too fruity for the afternoons. I should be far more straight and serious.
Well, that's not right, is it? You're fantastic, mate.
Can we give him the money? Crack on.
The problem is, how dare this government turn around and say Trump's a liar when they've done nothing else for the last 18 months than lie out their backsides all the time. I'll tell you what, Jez, get your $29.99 ready. I'm going to set up a page on box office, Trump and Vance versus Starmer and Reeves, and Rayner, if you like. And we'll have them over the dispatch box talking to each other. I would pay $29.99 to pay and view that.
It is extraordinary. So this is a story for people who are just tuning in of, again, it seems a bunch of Labour MPs and ministers who are affronted by the orange man baby. And let me make the point that I make every day. Not everything that Donald Trump does do I agree with. Not everything that he says or the way that he says it do I agree with. However, he was elected democratically by more people than a president has in the last 50 years, something like that in America.
Yeah.
He has a right to come here, but apparently they'll call him a liar and he shouldn't come. You're dead right. I think if you said to, this is really interesting, I think if you said to pensioners who got screwed over their fuel allowance, I think if you said to veterans who got made homeless, I think if you said to waspy women, I think if you said to farmers, what do you make of this government, they'd all go, they're complete liars. I don't want to hear from them. I think you're absolutely right, mate. Listen, happy bank holiday. Good to hear from you. Tristan in Southend-on-Sea. Very quickly, Tris, how are you? Welcome to Talk Drive.
Happy bank holiday, Jeremy. Okay, I'd just like to say, in relation to the DWP staff...
this is the woman who's fronting up as a DWP pensions advisor when in fact she's on OnlyFans or something.
I hate to say it, I've had dealings with the DWP because I'm registered blind and I'm a chronic epileptic, so I deal with them quite a bit. I have to say, do you know what, Jeremy? They're the most undeserved of abuse staff you could ever wish to meet. They are spoken to like dirt. They get no thanks. Everybody's rude to them, and they have to deal with people who are swinging the lead, and they must know it full well.
Do you know what?
Imagine doing that job, Jeremy.
So, do you know what? Why I'm really delighted we took the call. It's a bit like social work. I took a call the other day. Really easy to pile in, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's good to hear that there's a genuine story about somebody who feels that they do a good job. You never hear about social workers who do good things. You hear about social workers who take kids away when they shouldn't be taken away. We're talking today. Listen, we're doing it because, frankly, bless him, the pontiff died, and the rest of the day is not, you know. But that's interesting. So for you, as a person who needs them, they have been nothing but supportive, Tristan. Yeah.
Yeah, just always have manners and always say please and thank you. It goes so far with them, they'll do anything for you because they never get it.
Really, really nice. And thank you for making it talk. Are you having an OK bank holiday Monday?
I'm having a brilliant bank holiday. I've had Passover and Easter in one, so it's been good fun and I'm a very happy man. Thank you.
Good man. Listen, really appreciate you having on a happy Easter. Thank you very much indeed. Tristan in Southend-on-Sea. It's almost 12 minutes to 6. We have sport with a man... I don't want to go on too much, but who owes his entire career to me. And Dante's next on Talk Drive.
Breaking news this morning, Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, has died. The Vatican said in a video statement on Monday morning. He was 88 and had suffered various ailments in his 12-year papacy, most recently suffering from pneumonia, which caused him to be hospitalised for several days, at some points being said to have been very, very close to death. We saw him out in public only yesterday. You can look at those pictures here. He met with J.D. Vance just the other day.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Okay, minutes to 6, Bank Holiday Monday. Push the button, please.
Sport Summary on Talk.
One of the greatest sports broadcasters ever not available today, so we got Ian Danta. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, hello. So can I just give you Ryan? Ryan's 8'7". He's a Watford fan. He's up and down like a whore's drawers. I probably shouldn't have said that, but who cares? And Ryan is now totally. He started the day by saying we're just playing for mid-safety table. You know, Sevy and Tom Cleverley, good man. Now he's supporting St Albans. Cleverley needs to be sacked. Watford are a load of old rubbish, and he's desperately upset. Yeah, interesting games in the EFL this afternoon. Really interesting games, mate.
I just come back from one. I did one at lunchtime where Walsall at the top of League Two, who were 12 points clear in January and are now in 4th in the table, could only get a 0-0 draw at Newport. And the 3 teams above them had mixed fortunes, Port Vale, Bradford and Doncaster. But in the Championship, oh boy, you probably noticed, Jez, it was about a week ago that a table was printed where it showed the percentage chances of all 24 teams in terms of getting promoted or relegated. At that point, every team still had something to play for, albeit some of the percentages were daft, like 0.1%. But
at the bottom, all 4 bottom teams have won today, which brings it to about 49, 50 points. 13th, 12th or 13th could go down.
It was about that last season because my lot, Birmingham, went down with 50 points and whatnot. So 4 of the bottom 5 won. The other team, Cardiff, got a draw under their interim manager, Aaron Ramsey.
Yep.
So it really has tightened up. And what that's done is it's worried teams like Oxford, Preston, even Stoke City above that bottom 5 that they are not safe yet. And Stoke got absolutely walloped 6-0 at Leeds this afternoon. So Leeds have 1 foot in the Premier League now, Jess. If Sheffield United, who are playing now at Burnley, if they can't beat Burnley, then Leeds are up. And Burnley are up too.
I have to say, Farker, is that how you say it, Daniel Farker? I think they failed at the last minute last year. I think he's done an astonishing job. Leeds people will be very outspoken about, but I think they deserve to be back in the Premier League. I really do.
It's Farker's 3rd promotion because he won promotion twice with Norwich. And his relationship with the supporters has been, well, I think strained would be putting it too strongly, but certainly there are things he's done which the Leeds fans haven't agreed with. It took him a long while to switch out goalkeepers because the Leeds fans were not happy with Ilan Meslier as their first choice. So recently, Carl Darlow has been brought in. But if you spoke to most Leeds fans, they felt that was the change that should have been made a very long time ago.
Listen, he's got them in pole position. You can only take your hat off. I haven't got. I'd love more time. Liverpool will win the Premier League patently. Hotting up for the Champions League spaces tonight. Forest Spurs. Forest, you know, were 7 points clear. Suddenly everybody's snapping at their heels. Chelsea just sneaked it yesterday. Man City won. Newcastle battered by Aston Villa. Didn't see that coming, did you?
No, that was a bad day at the office for Newcastle. Maybe just a bit leggy, picking the same side again with Eddie Howe, of course, still recovering in hospital from pneumonia, and our very best wishes to him.
Absolutely.
Forest, well, Chris Wood's been out the side, and we know how important he's been. But I would also add Ola Aina, who's been one of the best right-backs in the division this season. He's been missing with his industry and creativity. But I don't know whether Forest are going to be hanging their hat on. I mean, Forest have got a cup semi-final to come, but Spurs, all they've got left this season is the Europa League. That's all they've got to hang their hat on.
I absolutely take Nottingham Forest to beat Spurs tonight. I genuinely believe they'll beat Spurs
as
tonight.
you know, Spurs' home form is not great.
No.
They often concede first at home. Sometimes they battle back and get a point or a win, but so often they're the first to concede in front of their own patch. And you wouldn't bet against Forest doing that. You're dead right, Jez.
I'm going to not be able to get away from this. My team were absolutely... We can't even beat Southampton, West Ham. Appalling. Did you see Nickers Fulcrew, who came, this German striker for 35 million, literally lambasted his teammates in an interview, and quite rightly, but I would want the manager out there doing that.
Well, Graham Potter's not the type to do that, is he?
He better do it privately, because they were rubbish.
Well, maybe so. And there's so often there's cases where managers will absolutely coat their players in their dressing room and then come out and paint a very different picture to the likes of me chatting to them in the mix zone. So Graham Potter wants a summer to get his own players in and start to... there's things that have got to change. You've lost Mikel Antonio after that horrible car crash. You've missed him. Fulkrug has been injured a lot. He's come back in and looked okay. There's lots of things to fix at West Ham United.
Loads, which would be really interesting. The coronation of Liverpool, one step closer. The Trent Alexander-Arnold, it's or Terence Trent D'Arby, as I call him. It had to be him scoring that goal. He's definitely Real Madrid bound, isn't he?
It seems so.
Where would you rather play, Liverpool or Real Madrid? If you're 27, you've been there since you were 12. You can have a go, aren't you? You can have a go.
The only fly in the ointment is Ancelotti's dismissal after going out of the Champions League. Maybe, I don't know whether that nudges the needle.
Well, I'm going to give you a really contentious view, Dance. Not that I've ever done that before.
No,
I'll
never.
tell you why I think Terence Trent D'Arby will go to Real Madrid. I'm going to call this and you can all laugh at me. I think Klopp will be the next Real Madrid manager. Not Xabi Alonso.
Xabi Alonso of Bayer Leverkusen appears to be in pole position. And of course, Klopp now has this job with the German FA, so he doesn't have a club job, as you are clearly referring to. Yeah, it's not beyond the realms of possibility. It just depends, because Klopp said when he left Liverpool, he wanted to take the time out from the pressures of day-to-day, week-to-week management. Is there a more high-pressure job in world football than that of being Real Madrid, where defeat is...
No, but look at where they are. Isn't it easy to build something from where Real Madrid are right now, to be fair? They looked spineless, didn't they, the other
You
day?
look at that front three, you look at Rodrigo, Vinicius, Mbappe, Jude Bellingham in midfield. Modric is coming to the end of his time, which is a shame, but what a player he's been. Chouameni. Yeah, I mean, there's potential to build another great dynasty of Real Madrid players.
Can I also congratulate you, by the way, on Birmingham City, who have been about to be promoted from the Dame Edna Everage National League 7, isn't it, or something? Well done, Birmingham City.
Yes. We are back in the Championship after we bought the league. We very nearly bought the cup.
Yeah.
We're back in the Championship, and let's hope we can make a better fist of it than we did in the 5 or 6 years before we got relegated. Because we were falling.
Dan, it's always great to have you on, my friend. Happy Easter to you. More from Ian next week. Hurrah! News at 6 on the way. Next. How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12.60. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks
How
ago.
much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome along, final hour of Drive for Bank Holiday Monday, just after 6 o'clock. This is JK on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. So much to talk about, loads to talk about. Of course, the sad news earlier today that Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, a man spearheading 1.4 billion Catholics across the world, sadly passing this morning at 88. Tributes have been pouring in across the day. You've had your say here on Talk. We'll do more of that definitely this hour. Everybody talking about that sad news. 0344 499 1000. Back in this country, much anger increasing at our Prime Minister, actually, who is silent on that Supreme Court gender ruling. Much anger at Ed Miliband, his Energy Secretary, who seems to think that all of us want net zero. Much anger with the police that they did nothing about those trans activists at the weekend who... well, they were vandals, they were hooligans, they defaced statues, but that's OK, nothing happened. Apparently the police are looking into it. Loads to talk about. 0344 499 1000. Just following on from that great conversation with Kinsey, the Duke of York, Andrew, of course, desperate to get back in the public eye, pitched up at the weekend at the Easter family service. This is interesting from Louise. She says, Jez, I reckon that's why William and Kate didn't go to the Easter church service, because Uncle Andy was going. You might well be right. They do tend to call it well. 0344 499 1000. We had one half. Now we've got the better half. Isabel Oakeshott, a very good afternoon to you. Happy Bank Holiday Monday.
What was the other half going on about?
He was sort of sitting there, open neck shirt, eating chocolates, calling me a few names, that sort of stuff. You know what? No, he wasn't actually. He was doing what he always did, working non-stop, obsessed. How are you?
Well, there's a country to save, that is why.
Yes, true.
And we've all got to do whatever we can, I guess. I am very well. I tuned in to you about half an hour ago, and I was quite shocked by how smutty it was all getting. I thought, this is not the family show I thought it was.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there seemed to be a lot of references to OnlyFans and...
This is a simple story, Isabel Oakeshott. You've raised it. This is a story that has made every single newspaper today. A civil servant has been filmed moonlighting on a porn site whilst giving advice over the phone to pension claimants. And I simply said that if you were phoning up and your pension was screwed and you had no money, Katy, who's your helper, turns out to be flashing to her followers live on Hamster, ex-Hamster. One wrote, "You wearing a thong, Katy?" She went, "Maybe." And she listed what she was prepared to do. You know, that's a civil servant. Your other half and his party want to get rid of the blob. I suggest they get rid of the blob quickly, because if you're phoning up about your pension, you don't want to see a half-naked woman in a thong, do you, really?
It might be more interesting than the pension. I mean...
Don't be so smutty, Isabel Oakeshott. You had to bring that story up because you're just being smutty. I'm trying to be serious. On a serious note, thank you very much indeed. We've done that story. Can I ask you something? This whole Keir Starmer refusing to speak out after that Supreme Court ruling last week. For any of us who aren't sort of Starmer fans, we're all going, how does a man who pontificates the whole time about how important the law is... Richard said it earlier. Some obscure law says, give the Chagos Islands to somebody. OK, I'll do that then. Some ECHR balmy law from wherever says, you know, allow a man not to go back to his homeland despite the fact he's raped people because his feelings will be hurt. And yet, here it is in black and white from the highest court in this land, and complete silence from our Prime Minister, Isabel.
Well, I just don't think that that is going to be sustainable. It's obviously not going to be sustainable. He's going to be asked it until he answers it.
Yeah.
And at the moment, he's still, I think, officially on holiday. But there's not going to be any escaping having to make a statement one way or on the other. If I were him, I'd try to get my word out before this Wednesday when it's Prime Minister's questions, or he could be very easily skewered on the issue, even though the leader of the opposition isn't brilliant and doesn't have a great track record of catching him out at PMQs. It's an obvious one to bring up, isn't it? So,
of course it is. And then also, I'm sure you'd have seen this over the weekend, stories that there's a WhatsApp group of frontbench Labour MPs already and ministers working out how they can, I mean, this almost, I find this astonishing that I'm saying this, how they can defy the law. That's...
Well, they're complete idiots, aren't they? They're complete idiots because when you look at how people react on this issue, I don't have any of the polling at my fingertips, but I can just tell from audiences in general at political speeches and so on, they react very, very strongly in favour of statements about there only being men and only being women, male and female. People generally think that is the position. And I just don't think that it's a good political win to try to resile from the Supreme Court judgment. And good luck to the Labour Party if this is a route they go down. I actually think they're stupid enough to try and do it.
Let me ask you something. As a parent like I am of teenagers, and we've probably said this before, but I think it's worth revisiting. I don't understand. I'm not going to name people. I'm sure you can work out the sorts of people I'm talking about. But I've always been quite supportive of women's rights. I've asked every single person this afternoon, why do all those women who so vociferously and correctly call for women's rights, protection of women's equality, all those sorts of things, why are they completely and utterly silent, Isabel Oakeshott, when it comes to women saying, women, not men, we don't want men who have a penis, might be trans. I'm not bothered. That's their business. I don't want them in sport with my teenage daughter. I don't want them in a changing room with my teenage daughter. Why are we allowing, what was it somebody said, there's 10,000 trans activists in the United Kingdom, there's 70 million people. Why is there so much noise, and why and where are the women who quite rightly stick up for women's rights, they disappear off the face of the earth?
Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, I think hopefully in the not too distant future, we will look back on this period as some kind of complete and utter perversion, a sick madness in which you ask girls and young women to compete with basically men at the same sport. It's really fundamentally wrong. It goes against every bit of common sense as to what's reasonable. And it's actually disgusting. It's really, really undermining of girls and young women in athletics and in all manner of other sports.
So why don't those women sticking up for those young girls who have tried? I gave the example earlier of Russell Quirk. His daughter's worked her way up at 15 or 16. I could be wrong on age, but to be the #1 paddle player in the United Kingdom of her age group, and yet I suspect there is a chance that transsexuals at that point could have played in those sorts of matches. I don't understand where those women are who feel that young girls, women, want protection, want help. I don't get it.
Well, there are some very good and brave and vocal campaigners on this, and we often have, don't we, Sharon Davies on Talk, making that case. But yeah, I don't know where they are. I mean, it shouldn't be controversial. It just shouldn't be controversial.
And I think we also saw at the weekend another example of absolutely two-tier policing and two-tier justice. The police have said today that they're hunting for the trans rights activists who defaced 7 London monuments, including, of course, the statue of suffragette Millicent Fawcett. So, again, I will be labelled, but I don't mean to be. You can march with a Palestinian flag and nobody says a word. Jews, some people with Jewish flags are being told they're intimidatory. You can go on the streets because you've read something online that turned out to be a lie. You're called far right, and you're not only arrested put on television, put in court and put in jail within 24 hours, but you can actively deface, well, vandalism and hooliganism, but because you're the trans rights activist group, the police who were there, do nothing about it. It's a joke.
Well, it is a complete joke, and the police have just got to do something about it, and I'm
They've
sure
got to be made to, haven't they?
100% they have. I mean, if necessary, there'll be people who can bring a private prosecution or whatever, but hopefully that won't be necessary. It's so cowardly, this type of policing. What is it that they're so afraid of? Well, we know what they're afraid of. They're afraid of the shrieking militant lobby that will say, oh, look at this footage of this person being arrested. How appalling, you know, discrimination, protected characteristics, etc., etc., etc. I don't care what gender they say they are or they think they are. Vandals are vandals. Yeah. Just as they're vandals that despoiled some 40 gravestones in a churchyard in I think in the Preston area.
Yeah,
that was
true.
Absolutely appalling. I don't know who did it. The police don't know who did it. But this type of behaviour is a sort of behaviour that does merit jail time, not just turning up and standing on the fringes of a riot. Not that we condone any rioting.
No. Or the hurt. We brought it back to Lucy Connolly. I don't condone anything that Lucy Connolly wrote, but surely in her, you would take that mother and say, what you wrote was disgusting. You're going to spend time in that community. We're going to teach you how those words were wrong. Community service, if you like, integrate you to where the people live who you made those terrible comments about. No, you're in jail for 31 months, but this can happen. You said something really interesting there. You always say something. That didn't you see? You're going to bite my head off because it's a Monday. You said we then risk upsetting the shrieking militant lobby. I think we're going to get to a point where a majority of Britons, am I allowed to say that, become the shrieking militant majority who are not prepared to have this tripe rammed down our throats the whole time. That's why I think, not just saying it, reform and other... I think are resonating with people because people are fed up of the BS they've been fed for so long, and they see a country that is in essence being hijacked. Well,
we'll know in a couple of weeks' time. There'll be a pretty good test of the national mood on a number of these issues. Local elections are a strange beast. They're so, in a sense, they're so boring. I mean, I've got to admit, I've often not voted in local elections, but this set seem a bit different. I think that there will be a number of people who are pretty motivated to turn out. And it's a big test for all the parties, this, and I'm quite excited to see how it plays out, because if there is an upset at that by-election, one of the safest seats in the country, safest Labour seats, well, that will send a pretty strong message about how people feel about a whole range of issues.
Do you want a Bank Holiday Monday joke? Will you smile?
Come on then, try me.
Do you think there's a chance that a party could deliver a knockout punch in Mike Amesbury's constituency to the Labour Party? Brilliant. Right, listen, I'm going to read some candidates in there.
Is that the punchline?
See, Ryan? We will read the candidates out. It was a bit of fun. Listen, on a serious note, something else as well about MPs. MPs and peers blocking or attempting to block liar Trump from Parliament address. Now, with respect, I suspect you agree with me. There's not everything I like about Donald Trump, or I agree with Donald Trump. Yes, he won the majority vote, a democratically elected president. This is from a bunch of MPs in a party that lied their way to power and have lied. I mean, I said it earlier, try saying that to pensioners and veterans and farmers and waspy women, you know? All of those people, they got lied to, didn't they?
I mean, I'm getting a kind of Groundhog Day feeling here, because didn't MPs try to do exactly the same when Trump was last president? Yep. I'm sure there was a whole fuss about, you know, keep him out of Westminster, blah, blah. And there was Sadiq Khan at the time allowing some ridiculous blimp to be floated above.
Oh, God, yes, you're right. That huge orange blow-up thing, yes.
Trump has a baby in a nappy. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And yet Sadiq Khan wouldn't allow all manner of other blimps to float above the city. So, get ready for yet more silly theatrics of that sort. You know,
do you think he should be allowed to visit?
Of course, he's a president of the United States, and we don't have to agree with everything or even the majority of what he has to say. But I think good relations are in everybody's interest, and showing respect is too. And if we roll out the red carpet for some pretty dubious characters in this country, so I think we can certainly and should roll out the red carpet for Donald Trump.
And I would have thought of the Labour Party. I would have thought that actually they would have thought to themselves, whether we like him or not, getting a trade deal is the most important thing to the growth and well-being of the United Kingdom.
Well, if they pull that off, then that will be a major win by this Labour administration. And even those of us that are fierce critics of basically everything that they've done so far would have to hand it to Keir Starmer and his crew if they manage to do that. Let's see.
Don't go anywhere, because we're going to talk about the world's worst human being, in my opinion, before anybody jumps up and down, Ed Miliband. But because I mentioned what I mentioned, it's a slight mistake. I have to name every candidate in the Runcorn and Helsby by-election. And obviously there's 5,735 candidates. So you take a breath. It's just part of being. Catherine Blakelock, English Democrats, Dan Clark, the Liberal Party, Chris Copeman, the Green Party, Paul Duffy, the Liberal Democrats, Peter Ford, the Workers' Party, Howling Lord Hope, bet you can't guess where he's from, the monster raving Labour Party, Shul Holston, the Conservatives, Jason Philip Hughes, Volt UK, really, Alan McKee, Independent, Graham Harry Moore, English Constitution Party, Paul Andrew Murphy, Social Democratic Party, Sarah Puchin, Reform, Karen Shaw, Labour, John Stevens, Rejoin the EU, Michael Williams, the Independent. There you are. So that was all my fault. Who cares? 8:18. Right, Isabel. Perhaps the most... I've left it to last because it's the sort of thing that sends both you and I over the edge. Ed Miliband, Richard said earlier, he feels that he's under pressure. Benedict Spence agreed. He has this weekend, and it's not about attacking Nigel Farage, he's also attacked anybody, including the Tories, who thinks that his net zero claims are outrageous. He thinks it's achievable. And he said, and I quote, that the majority of the United Kingdom agrees with what he's trying to do about net zero. Now, unless I do, in fact, live on another planet, I would say that's massively wide of the mark.
Well, it depends how you ask the question, isn't it? I mean, if you ask the question, do you want to save the planet, or would you rather, the planet, everything may die in 20 years or something? Well, people will go, yeah, I'd like to save the planet, and I'd quite like my children and grandchildren to be able to survive. If you say, do you want to have huge sums added to your energy bills? Do you want us to have to import coal from Japan or wherever it is we're bringing it from? Do you want to have to pay thousands of pounds for a stupid heat pump that doesn't work? I could go on with a list. The answer is going to be no. So it's all about how you ask a question. I actually think public opinion is really shifting on this, and it's taken.
Do you think it was ever... All right, you say shifting, but I'm really interested in this because maybe I'm your archetypal person, because I probably would say ish, although I wind my kids up by saying that's your problem. But I'm about the priorities of what we need to do as a country right now. And if we are unable to even afford the interest on our debt, shelling out billions of pounds to achieve something that, in brackets, is not achievable, open another set of brackets that the rest of the world's lost interest with, close brackets, then it's not value for money, is it? It's not value at all. People are going to go... I mean, are you telling me that there was a majority behind this, do you think, or what?
I'm telling you that the vast majority of people weren't that interested in it, and it's pretty poorly understood, and net zero sounded really boring, and people just switched off when it was mentioned, and they didn't actually understand what difference it was going to make on a day-to-day basis to their own lives. It was just a kind of theoretical thing. I think that's how many people...
Ideological, in fact, because looking back, I mean, I used to really compliment Boris Johnson, but Boris Johnson started this in the Tory party, talking about this green agenda and climate change. And if you remember at the time, everybody was saying, oh, that's the influence of Carrie and all that. But I just, yeah, it's priorities. And I think that the more you look at what's happening to this country, the more you would go, we're skint. We need to get our priorities right.
And it's not going to make any difference overall to the amount of, the global temperatures rise or sea levels rise, however much we thrash around and sacrifice ourselves on this strange altar. It's not going to make any difference at all. I think Benedict Spence had it right earlier. I think it was him that said, people really care about pollution. People want clean air, clean sea, clean rivers and all of that. But they're just not buying into anymore, I don't think, all this ludicrous kind of, oh, well, we can't have any gas and we can't have any oil and all of that.
I think we should drill, baby, drill. It's an absolute pleasure. You started by wanting to talk about the smutty story. I'm going to finish by talking about chocolate, because you presumably, have you eaten? You don't eat chocolate eggs, do you? Really?
Oh, my God, I love chocolate.
Do
Too
you?
much chocolate, yeah.
What's your favourite chocolate?
Oh, I'm so easily pleased. I will just have Cadbury's Dairy Milk or mini eggs, something like that. I don't need any fancy chocolate.
How adorable are mini eggs. Ryan brought in orange mini
I had about
eggs.
106 yesterday. I mean, I really did have about that many.
Sorry, you had how many mini eggs?
I reckon about 106. I mean, I wasn't counting, but it was a lot of mini eggs.
See, Jodie, she looks that incredible. 106 mini eggs. Unbelievable. We love you, Isabel. Happy Bank Holiday Monday, and thank you so much indeed for coming on. Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor, 6:22. We're live across the UK. Listen, if you want to be on between now and 7, delighted to take your call. 0344 499 1000. Your texts, we'll read some of them as well. 87222. We're coming back in 3. Legal aid is another thing that is being taken advantage of by people paid for by the taxpayer who have no bloody right to it, who are simply trying to get free.
And we have no say in who gets it. Nobody really understands it. All we ever hear from barristers and the legal profession is that, oh, you might think that legal aid is a good way for barristers to make money, but actually they don't really do very well on it. And that's the only story you ever hear. Nobody ever says, well, hang on, aren't we giving legal aid to the wrong people?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:25. Going to speak to Melanie McDonough, a Catholic journalist, about the sad death of Pope Francis this morning. Just a tick. Loads of people texting. Appreciate that. Hello, Jezza Margaret here. Surely the time has come when marches through the streets, especially in London, are banned and only allowed in Hyde Park, Green Park, or some other large open space that properly be policed so that the rest of us can go about our business without fear or favour. Interesting. Kenny is in Edinburgh. Hello, Kenny. Hi, Jez. I honestly believe with my heart and soul that trans activists are not advocating for trans rights at all. These people are the same people who appear at supposedly pro-Palestinian marches too, but it appears obvious to me that their only genuine cause is simply to cause trouble because they get away with it and get lots of attention. There is an argument, Kenny, that, and I believe that there are plenty of worthwhile causes, OK, so you might all be shocked. Just Stop Oil might be to some people a worthy cause. It's been hijacked so that nobody cares or gives a toss about what it actually means. I believe the trans argument has been hijacked. I genuinely believe that. And I think that that is I think it's so true. Louise, how are you? Jez, you're spot on. Where are the Me Too movement that swept Hollywood and London? Funny how the lefty-lovey actors have disappeared instead of sticking up for the women who have campaigned with dignity. Louise, that's the point. 0344 499 1000. Anne's in Sussex. Anne, good evening. You're on Talk Drive. How are you?
Good evening. Lovely to talk to you, and thanks for taking my call. How am I? Well, it's been quite a good Easter, hasn't it? The weather's not been too bad.
Did you eat lots of chocolate, Anne, in Sussex?
No, I didn't. I can't.
Oh.
I like it, but I couldn't eat it.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's good, because chocolate's not the same as it was.
Oh, God, is chocolate not the same as it was either? Oh, dear. Oh, go on then.
Sorry.
No, I'm depressed now about the chocolate. Crack on.
Oh, no. The reason I rang was because I didn't study women's history until I was in my 50s. I didn't know what women had achieved. But when you talked earlier about who's standing up, you know, with all that's gone on for the past 50 years, the abuse of young girls and boys, and the way they've been left, and it affects generations, nobody stood up and shouted, really, apart from the brave people who have succeeded. That's not a big issue. We'll only stand up and shout for something in America for film stars or famous women. And it makes me cross that we haven't done that and we're not doing it. And I thought, and see if you agree, it seems that the feminists, the strong feminists, and some women, they don't like ordinary women. They don't like feminine women. I remember that, you know, in the 60s, you were meant to burn your bra, and caring for your children was definitely frowned upon. You should be career women. And so the ordinary woman who for generations has raised children and looked after their neighbours and done all the work that women did, they don't count. And added to that is the fact that I think Starmer is trying to ride two horses. He's happy for his activists or fellow MPs to come out and say we'll overturn this ruling on what a woman is. And then they'll have a group coming out, as they are, supporting the ruling, because the elections are due in May.
Do you know, I would never ask you how old you are, but I sat and I smiled during that because it reminded me of my late mother. I took her, no, it did, and she was everything to me. She once said to an ex-girlfriend who was a bit of a feminist, have you got a job? And she said, my job is looking after my husband and my children. It's the most demanding job, and that's the job I do. Of course, she went to work as well at various stages during her life, but I so agree with you that it is... I've never been against feminism. I've never been against women's rights. I genuinely haven't. I frown. My wife, Victoria, she's a stay-at-home mum. That's the hardest bloody job that anybody could do. I do it for 2 hours. I could enter rehab. I'm being completely serious. It's 24 hours a day, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Nothing wrong with women having the same careers, better careers, nothing. Also, it shouldn't be frowned upon being a mother and a wife. Sorry, just genuinely, completely agree with you, Anne, really do. Thank you so much, sweetheart. Great to have you on, 6:30, live across the UK. So I promised you our next caller. Melanie McDonough is a Catholic journalist who writes for The Standard and The Spectator. Melanie, on this sad day for Catholics across the world, welcome to Talk Drive. How are you?
But not too bad, thank you.
The news, of course, that we woke up to this morning was that Pope Francis had passed away peacefully in his sleep. And we've touched upon this. 1.4 billion Catholics across the world in mourning. He was the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church. How different was he to others before him?
He was radically different. He was not just the first Latin American Pope, though his parents were in fact from Italy. He was quite startlingly informal in his way of going about, in his way of being Pope. He was, from the outset, very different from his predecessors. He was the first one to be a Francis, to take the same name as Francis of Assisi. He was, I think, very much antipathetic to the kind of trappings and the ornate aspects of the papacy, which personally I think are great, but which were completely at odds with his notion of humility and poverty. And he was quite austere in his way of being a pope, in the way that I can't recall any of his predecessors being, not because they weren't personally austere, but because the job brought various trappings with it, which he didn't hesitate to do away with.
It's quite interesting. We have a situation with the monarchy in this country where many people are saying that Charles's remit, in his mind, before he passes on to his son, is to modernise the monarchy and make it more relevant. And I picked up on something you said about Pope Francis being different. Forget as you said, the trappings of the papacy. Just talk about the man who was quite liberal, his concern about different parts of society. He was quite vociferous. You would argue that he was more involved in politics and got involved in issues far more verbally than his predecessors. Do you think that was an attempt to modernise Catholicism? And I'm being deadly serious, because there will be people who will say that 1.4 billion Catholics and the Church of England, but religion has to modernise, it has to be more relevant. Do you think that explained some of the things that he said and he did?
No, I think it's very much the style of the man, that this was an expression of what he was like as a person. So I think that repudiation of the ornate aspects of the papacy were very much what he was about. So, for instance, he turned away from the really beautiful Renaissance papal apartments, which anybody else would have killed to live in. He took one look at them and thought no, and he went straight for this hideous little hostel, the Casa Santa Marta in the Vatican, and he thought, I'll have a few rooms there instead. And instead of having some gorgeous gold cross, he went for a sort of silver gilt affair. So everything that he did represented what he was. Mm-hmm. So he didn't want any papal red slippers. He just went for his old orthopedic shoes, which looked completely hideous, but were very much an expression of what he was about.
All right, but do you think the person that he was then, to maybe put it in different words, has changed the papacy forever?
It's impossible to say, because every pope does the papacy differently. Yeah. And successor will have a style of his own and a personality of his own. So he, I think, was unaffected and direct in a way that his predecessor wasn't. But before his predecessor, before Benedict, we had John Paul II, mm-hmm. who was also quite charismatic and also, well, he was even more theatrical and in a way as direct as Benedict. So it's impossible to say that he set the template for a successor, because he may have his own way of doing things in the same way as Francis.
Explain to us heathens the process of selecting a successor to Pope Francis. There's always the story told they all gather together and eventually smoke comes out of the plume, and that's when they've decided, etc. Is this a process that's set in stone in terms of how long it takes and who's evolved, or can it take... Tell us more. I'm fascinated myself, actually.
Well, there's a whole series of votes, and the selection is whittled down as each vote takes place, and until finally you get an idea of how many votes it's going to take before the next pope will be elected. And
do they have hustings? Do they have to stand up and promote themselves, or is it literally? I mean, I'm being serious. Is it like a leadership of a political party? Do they have to put their case to the people?
It's really bad form to put yourself around nowadays, but Francis, in his book that was published quite recently, talked about when he was staying at the Casa Santa Marta with the other electors. They asked him to give an account of himself and to repeat a sermon he'd given earlier. And he was talking about bringing the periphery of the church, that is the bits on the margins, into the centre and to make the outside-in approach. And that attracted a lot of the cardinals. But he was talking about some dirty tricks on the part of one Spanish-speaking cardinal who was saying, "Is it true you only have one lung?" And they were putting about that he wasn't really up to it in terms of health. So that's very much in the style of Conclave and the recent film and book.
Absolutely. The other thing I was going to ask you was, would the Pope Francis, but predecessors as well, would they have any input before their death? Would they put in place a succession plan or not? Is it really afterwards decided by everybody else, the cardinals?
Well, he's put a succession place in plan in the sense that he's appointed about 80% of the College of Cardinals. Something like 110 out of 138 cardinal electors have been appointed by Francis, but we don't know how that's going to play out. I mean, a number of them are from the periphery of the church, from the far margins in Asia and Africa, and there's a Scandinavian cardinal. So it's very, very hard to say how they'll jump. So in theory, it should mean that somebody in his mould is elected, somebody quite liberal in his fashion. But it's by no means guaranteed. Anything could happen.
Fascinating. And really, I know how busy you have been today. Sad news, obviously, for the Catholic Church, but really appreciate your time. Melanie McDonough, thank you very much indeed. Catholic journalist, describing there what happens and paying tribute to Pope Francis, who died today, aged 88. This is Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
20 to 7, we're live across the UK. It's not Kev O'Sullivan tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I have shocking yet wonderful news. Kevin O'Sullivan has morphed into Alex Phillips. Can you get her in here at 10 to 7 instead of doing what he does, coming in at 30 seconds to? Because I've got loads to talk to her about. Can I also say to a very, very brave, special and lovely young lady called Louise, who's 21 on Friday. Louise, your dad is the bomb, as you know I say all the time. Delighted that everything's going well for you, sweetheart, and happy birthday on Friday. And you need to explain to me the name of the new boyfriend, because I'm not altogether sure I'm happy about this, but your dad and I will allow it. What's his name? Kieran. Watching you, son. 0344 419 1000. Text to 87222. Delighted to be joined by my next guest. Good old friend of the show. That didn't sound right. Greg Swenson, Chair, Republican Overseas. Hello, dear boy. Happy Easter to you. How are you?
Great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Are you in London or America?
I'm in America. I'm in Washington, D.C.
Oh, bless your heart. Now, listen, just up from Washington, D.C., you know, there's a small sort of part, and there's an Italian restaurant where there's an old woman sitting in the window making pasta with a spinning machine. Do you know where I mean?
I don't, but I'll find it.
You got to find it. It's like Little England. It's absolutely amazing. Greg, big stuff happening here. And, of course, Donald Trump right at the centre of it. The Orange Man Baby has been attacked this weekend by MPs on the Labour side and peers who are apparently trying to block the liar Trump, this is what they're saying, the liar Trump from coming here, and if he does come here, addressing Parliament. Now, this has been met as ever with the greatness of Talk viewers and listeners by saying, hold on a minute, we've got a government that lied to pensioners, veterans, farmers and waspy women. That's a bit rich. But surely, from an American point of view, love him or loathe him, the man won the popular vote. He's a democratically elected leader of the free world. He has every right to come here and address Parliament, doesn't he?
Of course he does. And I think, you know, I thought Trump derangement syndrome had died down a little bit versus the first term, but it's alive and well. And I you know, spoke recently to a committee at the House of Lords, and they just, you know, they still just can't get over the fact that he won. And, you know, just like some of the protest crowd here in America, you know, so it doesn't surprise me. But then again, it's somewhat immature to make those kind of comments, and I don't think they'll stick. I don't think it will work. But you know, if they want to complain, go ahead. It's really interesting. I see it. I mean, to a degree, a bit like this country. We've got huge issues. The Supreme Court the other day decided that a woman is a woman, you know, and we all went, it's taken 5 years and 50 million quid. Actually, Donald Trump did it in 2 days. But there are people, even in government, and we know this from 5 days, who will refuse to accept this, who will actively refuse to accept it. And I guess you said there have been 1 or 2 demonstrations. There's been demonstrations against Trump. The country was still split, but he won the majority vote. But I suspect those completely disillusioned Democrats are still doing everything they can and convincing themselves that evil... I mean, watching that bloody programme, The View, they won't name him, and they all, you know, they all refuse to sleep with their husbands who voted for him. Is that right? Madness. I'm not sure that would be a tough sell. Have you seen The View lately?
Sorry, yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, sign me up. But look, I think, and you're right, Jeremy, it's really rich for them to talk about lying after the censorship that's gone on in both countries, not just in the UK, but during the Biden years in the US. And so it is really rich. And President Trump, to say he's a liar, okay, he does use hyperbole. He does like to exaggerate. But he's actually the most transparent president we've ever had. The administration is completely transparent right now, much more so than, I mean, obviously Biden wasn't really capable of communicating, so he didn't do press conferences or interviews.
But Trump tells you what he's had for breakfast. I mean, he holds a press conference every day, doesn't he?
Yeah, he really does. And his his cabinet and others in the administration are the same way. It is a really transparent. They believe that the voters, the people, have a right to know what's going on in government. And so to, you know, again, to call him a liar is just obscene in many ways.
And in terms of America, just really interested as well to get this from you, because there's so much going on in this country and the government is not transparent. It just seems incapable of having a discussion. I mean, they won't, you know, our Prime Minister will not mention the Supreme Court's been 5 days and he thinks that they're not going to actively ask him every single goddamn day. What about Americans? Am I right in saying, did I read something today that despite the criticism and despite this, his approval rating's actually risen? Is that right in the last few weeks?
Yeah, he had a bit of a dip during the beginning of the trade announcements or the tariff announcements. So he had a dip for a week, but he's right back. I think JLL Partners, which is my favorite polling firm, they have him at 54, which is by far his highest ever. He peaked at 47 in his first term, but he's been well above 47, at or above 47 the whole time. But more importantly, it's the things that he's doing that are polling really well. Mass deportation, which, the UK should take a page out of that playbook. Yeah. Mass deportation is polling up 15, approve, disapprove. But with Hispanics, mass deportation of criminals is polling at 68 with Hispanics. And it's polling in 2/3 of Kamala voters.
And my point about Donald Trump is that love him or loathe him, and there's stuff, I've said this to you, we're friends, there's stuff that I don't agree with about Donald Trump. There's plenty. But what I like about Donald Trump and what I would crave in this country is somebody who says, this is what I'm standing on. I don't care what you legally, media-wise, or whatever throw at me. If I get elected on that, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to take on anybody, and if it works, fantastic, and if not, I'll disappear. Yeah. That's what that man has done, and God knows we could do with somebody with that sort of backbone. Agree with him or don't agree with him, it's the fact that he does what he says he's going to be elected for. That's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, he's remarkably honest, sometimes too honest. Yeah. I'm not sure that, that he has to say as much as he says, but he, he is really honest and open, and he campaigned on a few issues, and he's delivering on those issues. So he's doing exactly what the voters want him to do. And that's why those policies and his actions are polling so well. I mean, it's really an 80-20 universe. Why the Democrats and the media are obsessed with these 20% issues, these issues that poll at 20. Men playing in women's sports, I'm sorry, that polls at 20. Right? And why are they dying on that hill? It's remarkable to see.
Because that's just ideology like our government. Talk about, this was my point. If you're going to stand up and you're going to pontificate about, net zero or how you should save this community, whatever, if you go and you ask people in this country what I call the jams, just about managing, that's an English phrase, they will tell you about their mortgage, their energy prices, the fact they can't see a doctor, the fact their kids can't do whatever. And that doesn't mean they're racist or bigoted or whatever, but you're going to look at your life, aren't you? That's the point. And that's what I think I think that's what he gets into with Americans. I really do.
Does. He really took advantage of the voter sentiment and addressed what the voters care about. And I've spent a lot of time in both England, as you know, and Ireland in the last year. The top two issues are mass immigration and cost of living. What does the government talk about? Net zero and extermination of misinformation, which is basically censorship. So, that it's outrageous that they're completely ignoring the people, and they're doing that all over Western Europe.
I don't think it'll. I think the people actually. I think that's a great phrase to finish at. I think the people will be heard, and that's not me being outrageous or anything. Greg, come back soon. Come back from that country. Come and say hi.
I'm permitted 90 days, so I'll be back.
Good man. Greg Swenson live there from Washington, D.C. What is it? 12 minutes to 7. I summon Alex Phillips to Studio 1, to the diary room now.
Breaking news this morning, Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, has died. The Vatican said in a video statement on Monday morning. He was 88 and had suffered various ailments in his 12-year papacy, most recently suffering from pneumonia, which caused him to be hospitalised for several days, at some points being said to have been very, very close to death. We saw him out in public only yesterday. You can look at those pictures here. He met with J.D. Vance just the other day.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Can I just say welcome back? Put Alex Phillips on. This is brilliant. So Dave Rhodes is a legend.
Tekop. I call him Tekop. It sounds like a sort of Nepalese Sherpa name. Just Tekop.
No, Tekop.
It almost sounds like Star Trek. Tekop.
No, but he's brilliant.
He is. We love him.
And he deserves huge camaraderie. And I've just told him what you said to me off air, and he's just gone, God, this is some afternoon. Hello, darling.
Hello.
They've kept us apart for a while, haven't they?
I think they deliberately separate us.
Why did they deliberately separate us on Plank of the Week, do you
Because
think?
you had that dream.
Brilliant. Right, anyway. Yes, I did. I did have that dream.
You told everyone,
yes,
and now they're like, well.
I did have that dream, and then you made me tell you it. See, I've dropped everything now.
You told everyone it.
I did, yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't actually do it as a segment on your show. I mean, I actually heard from other people about your dream. People messaged me saying, "Have you heard about Jeremy's
Well, they said,
dream?"
"Have you told Alex yet?" And I said, "I haven't got the courage to." And Mike Graham said, "I'll be the middleman." I went, "I bet you will."
That wasn't even the person who told me.
Who told you?
I don't know. It's like someone, then someone else, and someone else.
Jody.
It's like three. No, not even someone in this building.
Now, obviously, there's lots to talk about on your show. You'll be talking about Pope Francis. We've done that, bless him. We can talk about silence from Starmer on the gender ruling, Miliband, net zero.
Okay, so hold on. Let's backtrack about the silence from Starmer on the gender ruling, because I heard something and I was like, you know, sometimes someone says something in a sentence and you're like, that is so brilliant, I'm going to nick it.
Was it something I said?
It wasn't.
No, of course it wasn't. There's no way.
It was actually my other half. And he said to me, do you know what? Standing up for women seems to be now frowned upon as really old-fashioned and right-wing and dinosaurish.
I don't like your other half, OK, for reasons that we know.
Because of the dream.
Yeah, but I have to tell you, he's spot on. I have said the whole time, right, here's the thing, right, you're much more intelligent than me. Where are all those activists who quite rightly were shouting from the rooftops of women's rights? They don't seem to care when women say, I don't want a bloke with a penis in a dressing room, in a change room, and I've got a teenage daughter. Why am I not allowed to say that?
Everyone's like, woo, we won at the Supreme Court. What did you win? We're women. I'm like, do you not think that's a red flag for society?
Yeah, it's true.
The fact that we've had to, you know, we've won the vote, equal access to work, all these things, and then all of a sudden we're in the Supreme Court, not the High Court. It should have been thrown out at the, you know, coroner's court, basically, and then did an autopsy that proves that it's toxic and cancerous. But instead it gets to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, that goes, guess what? Women are women. I'm like, how backwards is it?
What do you think the world thinks that it took 5 years and however many millions of pounds? However,
but you know our good friend James O'Brien, you know, the mad-eyed one who looks like he needs a wash.
No.
Yeah,
who's he?
What I mean, well, exactly. But he did this whole rant about, oh well, it must be Trump, Trump this, Trump that, and I'm like, this is typical. Erase the women, erase the fact that it was women in sex matters, like Maya Forster, Helen Joyce, standing up for protecting women, who got it to the Supreme Court, and he just goes misogynist in chief. He looks like he's a bit.
Anyway, the one story that I wanted to do with you, because Ryan's got that scary one, is the civil servant, and I want to put this to you.
The civil servant.
A civil servant has been filmed moonlighting on a porn site whilst giving advice over the phone to pensions claimants. She was seen working from home, helping callers at the same time as flashing to her followers on X-Hamster. The woman who said, hello, it's Katie. You phone her up if you've got to worry about your pension, you're concerned about... She's the civil servant, she said...
Slipping a nip or something and whacking it on live.
One wrote, you wearing a thong? Katy went, no. The follower wrote about, what could you do for me? She said, well, dirty talk, flashing, role play, topless and striptease.
And she's literally
so she is employed,
as we say in the industry. Simulcasting.
Simul something. Yeah, stimulating. Oh, whatever. This is the blob. This is the blob.
Was she a blob, by the way? Because normally these people aren't exactly.
See, a woman can say that, but I can't. She was wearing a dressing. You know, they say that she was wearing a dressing gown and a t-shirt. So he's on the end of the phone going, "Oh, Katy's got."
I bet we wish she was probably wearing a bag over her head as well.
Brilliant. There
I've
you are.
not seen her.
No,
I can only imagine what a woman of that esteem might present.
Well, we found out this afternoon that the wonderful Jodie who works on the show and her boyfriend Cam, they have their own OnlyFans channel. It's called Big Cam or Steady Cam.
Is that a joke?
No, it's true.
Our Jode?
Our Jodie.
Scouse Jode?
Scouse Jode.
Has got
an OnlyFans account.
Jeremy, do you think that maybe we could make a bit more money of that?
Oh, Ryan, look, do you know what I love most about having you on is Ryan looks utterly petrified.
Yeah, but that's Ryan.
Makes a change from O'Sullivan.
It's like, that's kind of Ryan's.
She's got a ring. I love that. Even Jodie's looking shocked. You can subscribe. No, we're joking. Jodie and Cam.
Tech Up always looks a bit like that because he lives his life here, basically pressing buttons.
What have you got? I love you so much. What have you got on your show, babe?
But
I'm not allowed to say, babe. That's disrespectful,
actually,
is it?
I do want to tease something really important because there has been a fantastic. No, come on. We're doing a sort of handbrake turn reverse right now. Okay, so tone change. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. No, there's been an incredible story of a young man who is actually the child of a woman who was raped by a guy in a grooming gang.
God.
His mother has since committed suicide, passed away. She's no longer with us. I think actually might be alcohol related. He's been brought up essentially by his grandmother.
Yep.
And they've been trying to seek justice for years. He is
What sort of justice does he want?
He wants to see the person responsible for what happened to his mum prosecuted.
Quite right.
And the CPS has pushed to sort of drop the case again and again. We're going to be speaking to his grandma, who was his mother figure in the show.
And actually, on the back of just before Easter, that Jess Phillips saying, no, we're not doing not even a national inquiry, we're not even doing local inquiries. People like him, the offspring of a victim who's no longer here, and we should repeat that, who took her own life because of the fact that she was raped. He wants justice. He should get it. That's where
technically, I don't think she sort of took her own life, but her life was harrowed by this.
Oh, I thought you said she committed suicide.
Her life was harrowed by this incident.
Yes, of course.
And she struggled so much.
Of course it would be.
And but it's one of those remarkable stories. Can you imagine? I mean, you spent a lot of time in your broadcast career speaking to people who really had gone through life traumas and incredible circumstances.